Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
All right, back for some more Ulysses S. Grant. Finishing up this guy's story. This guy probably has the most incidents and scandals in his presidency than any president in the entire history of America. You'll see, because this whole episode is about scandals and incidents in Grant's presidency.
This guy's rough.
It is absolutely crazy how much shit goes on. With this guy's stuff.
Piecing a country back together.
When we left off last episode, him and Johnson, they ain't getting along so well. So guess what? 68 elections coming up, and he's about to be nominated. And we know what happens at that 1868 presidential campaign. Grant's curt response to Johnson in the Stanton matter, because Johnson got rid of Stanton, and then Congress voted to bring Stanton back. It was a whole big old thing. That increases popularity with the radical Republicans. John Weiss Forney, editor of the Washington Daily Chronicle, who had paved the way for previous presidential nominations, took up the effort for Grant's nomination by first inquiring with Brigadier General John Aaron Rawlins, who was a Grant confidant, about Grant's interest in the presidency. Rawlins responded that while Grant was a loyal member of the Republican Party, he would be unable to serve as president for financial reasons, since he would lose his lifetime military pension upon ascendancy to the White House, and the presidency did not provide any such income benefit, which is crazy.
Right. Why would he lose his military? Just for them 4 years?
No.
Or 8 years?
Well, once you resign to your spot, you lose it.
That's true.
How do you end this general and you have no money saved up? Like, what are you doing? Everything's paid for, probably.
By becoming president under current terms, Grant, he would at best leave the office at age 56 with no income.
That's young as hell.
Assuming that he served 2 terms. Rollins hoped Forney could facilitate a legislative change to solve this very problem. The ultimate answer was that this could not be changed. Forney forged ahead with an editorial reviewing Grant's record with the recommendation for his nomination. Grant personally approved the writing before publication. By reviewing the article, though limited to the accuracy of his record, Grant implicitly opened the door for the nomination despite the precarious financial prospects in his future.
Well, the Republicans did indeed choose Grant as their presidential candidate on that first ballot at the 1868 Republican National Convention in Chicago, and he faced no significant opposition. The Republicans kept the name Union on their ticket, as had been done earlier at the 1864 convention. Right. Grant received all 650 votes from delegates, with no other candidate being nominated, and upon the announcement was welcomed with a frenzied enthusiasm. In his letter of acceptance, Grant concluded with, "Let us have peace," which became his campaign slogan. For vice president, the delegates nominated House Speaker Schuyler Colfax. All right.
In June, Grant traveled to St. Louis, having gained possession of his father-in-law's plantation and an additional 200 acres of dent land. He had 12 slave cabins demolished to banish the vestiges of any slavery on that property whatsoever. As was common practice at the time, Grant remained at home in Galena during the campaign and left most of the active campaigning and speaking on behalf of his campaign manager, William Chandler, and others.
Well, had it easy.
The Democrats nominated former New York Governor Horatio Seymour.
Horatio Seymour.
Seymour!
Their campaign focused mainly on ending Reconstruction and returning control of the South to the white planter class, which alienated many war Democrats in the North. The Democrats attacked Republicans' support of African-American rights while deriding Grant, calling him Captain of the Black Marines.
Well,
Democratic orators over and over proclaimed Grant was a drunkard.
well,
Grant himself did not take to the stump, allowing Republican spokesmen to identify him with patriotism and with grief for Lincoln's martyrdom. Don't jab back at him. Just
Right.
you're a hero, dude. I mean,
in Grant's
this might screw him.
Right. In Grant's 1862 General Order Number 11, and anti-Semitism became an issue during the presidential campaign. In a letter published after the election, Grant sought to unequivocally distance himself from General Order Number 11. Grant refused to associate with this order any longer, saying, "I have no prejudice against sector or race, but want each individual to be judged by his own merit." There you go. DEI back then was alive and well, huh? As was expected at the time, Grant returned to his home and state and left the active campaign.
That would have been the opposite of DEI.
Right. During the campaign, the Republican focused on continuing Reconstruction and restoring the public credit. It's like, we got to get this country back together. We got to reconstruct it.
Right.
We got to make the Southerners feel at home again. Let's do it, guys.
Well, Grant won the election by 300,000 votes out of 5,716,082.
Damn, that's it.
He received an electoral college landslide of 214 to Seymour's 80.
Damn.
Grant, at the age of 46, became the youngest president on record. His election was a triumph of principles that included sound money, efficient government, and the restoration of Southern reconstructed state. When he assumed the presidency, Grant had never before held elected office, and at the age of 46, yes. He was the first president to be elected after the nation had outlawed slavery, obviously, and granted citizenship to former slaves.
Right. You knew he was going to win in a landslide anyways, taking down the frickin' Confederate Army. Implementation of these new rights was slow to come. 1868 election. The black vote counted in only 16 of the 37 states, nearly all in the South. Well, Grant lost Louisiana.
Wait, the black votes counted in the South? Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a kick in the nuts, the South.
Right. The black vote counted in only 16 of 37 states, which we all said, which was mostly in the South. Grant lost Louisiana and Georgia primarily due to the Ku Klux Klan violence against African-American voters. Grant's March 4th, 1869 inaugural speech addressed 4 priorities. First, he said he would approach Reconstruction calmly, without prejudice or hate or sectional pride, remembering that the greatest good for the greatest number is the object to be obtained. Secondly, he spoke on the nation's financial situation, which he can't even speak on himself.
Right. How are we supposed to take financial advice from a guy that's a broke bitch?
He was advocating a return to a specie basis.
Yeah?
Third, he said, he spoke on foreign policy. He advocated Americans to be respected with equality worldwide. Lastly, he advocated the passage of the 15th Amendment, that blacks or former slaves receive the constitutional right to vote.
Yes, and he will. Let's take a look at his cabinet and how he rounded that out. Apparently, they surprised the nation. Although he respectfully listened to political advice, he independently bypassed traditional consultation from prominent Republicans and kept his cabinet choices secret.
Oh.
His initial cabinet nominations were met with both criticism and approval. He appointed Elihu Washburn, who was Secretary of State, as a friendship courtesy.
Okay.
Washburn served 11 days of office and then resigned.
Oh, wow.
A week later, he appointed Washburn Minister to France. Then appointed conservative Hamilton Fish, who was a former governor of New York, to replace Washburn.
All right.
Jeez.
He then,
So just to say that he held the title,
Right.
Here you go, friend.
he then went on to appoint wealthy New York merchant Alexander Stewart, Secretary of Treasury. But he was quickly found to be disqualified by federal law that prohibited anyone in the office from engaging in commerce.
Oh, yeah, that's probably a good idea.
When Congress would not amend the law at Grant's bidding, an embarrassed Grant appointed Massachusetts Congressman George Boutwell to replace Stewart. For Secretary of War, Grant appointed his former Army Chief of Staff, John Rawlins. However, Rawlins died of tuberculosis in September
Dude, his
1869.
presidency is not starting out very well. Jeez, that's a sign of things to come there, guys.
Right. To replace Rawlins, 6 weeks later, Grant appointed former Union Army General William Belknap.
Why didn't he get his buddy Sherman or Sheridan?
Right.
Well, for U.S. Attorney General, he appointed Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Associate Justice Ebenezer Hoare. For Secretary of Navy, he appointed Philadelphia businessperson Adolph Bory.
Okay.
Bory resigned from office June 25th, 1869, finding the job stressful.
What?
His notice accomplishment.
Secretary of the Navy? I guess.
His noted accomplishment was the racial integration of the Washington Navy Yard.
Oh, fantastic.
Grant then appointed a former New Jersey public prosecutor, George Robison, to replace Bory. For Secretary of Interior, he appointed former Ohio Governor and Senator Jacob Cox. Postmaster General, he appointed Senator of Maryland John Creswell, who racially integrated the U.S. Post Office.
Look at
Look at
that.
that, guys. Black people can now deliver your mail.
Fantastic. They don't know where they're delivering it to, but... March 1869, President Grant made it known that he desired the Tenure of Office Act, which is in 1867. He wanted that repealed, stating it was a stride toward a revolution in our free system. The law prevented the president from removing executive officers without Senate approval. Grant,
Oh, damn.
Right. Grant believed it was right.
That's what Johnson tried to do to Stanton, and everybody got all pissed. And now he wants to do it? Well,
Yeah. Grant believed that it was a major curtailment to the presidential power. To bolster the repeal effort, Grant declined to make any new appointments except for vacancies until the law was overturned. What a piece of shit.
Well, March 9th, 1869, the House repealed the law outright, but the Senate Judiciary Committee rejected the bill and only offered Grant a temporary suspension of the law.
Okay.
When Grant objected, the Senate Republican caucus, they met and proposed allowing the president to have a free hand in choosing and removing his cabinet.
Well,
I don't see why you wouldn't.
Right.
The Senate Judiciary Committee wrote the new bill. A muddled compromise was reached by the House and Senate, and Grant signed the bill into law April 5th, having gotten virtually everything he wanted.
Virtually. Fantastic. Let's take a look at the 15th Amendment. Grant worked to ensure ratification of the 15th Amendment, approved by Congress, sent to the states during the last days of the Johnson administration. The amendment prohibited the federal and state governments from denying a citizen the right to vote based on that citizen's race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Ooh, even if they were a rebel.
Even if they were former slaves.
Right. 24th of December, 1869, everybody's putting up their stockings, getting ready for Santa. Grant established federal military rule in Georgia. And he restored black legislators who had been expelled from that state legislature. And look at him. Good for you guys.
February 3rd, 1870, the amendment reached the requisite number of state ratifications, which was then 27, and was certified as the 15th Amendment to those United States Constitution. Well, that one. Oh. He hailed its ratification as a measure of grander importance than any other one act of the kind from the foundation of our free government to the present day.
Okay.
By mid-1870, former Confederate states, which were Virginia, Texas, Mississippi, and Georgia, they had ratified the 15th Amendment and were readmitted to the Union. Oh. Well, that's what they said. You guys want to be readmitted, you better allow black people to vote, buddy.
Yeah, buddy.
Georgia's pissed.
Yeah, Georgia, 22nd of June, 1870. Grant signed a bill into law passed by Congress. It created the Department of Justice and to aid the Attorney General, the Office of Solicitor General. Grant appointed...
He created the DOJ?
And Solicitor General. Wow. Grant appointed Amos Ackerman as the Attorney General and Benjamin Bristow as America's first ever Solicitor General. Both Ackerman and Bristow used the Department of Justice to vigorously prosecute KKK members in the early 70s. Grant appointed Hiram Whitley as director of the new Secret Service Agency in 1869. After he had successfully arrested 12 Klansmen in Georgia who had murdered a leading local Republican official. Oh, shit.
Whitley used talented detectives who infiltrated and broke up KKK units in North Carolina and Alabama. However, they could not penetrate the main hotbed of a KKK activity in upstate South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Grant sent in army troops, but Whitley's agents learned they were lying low until the troops were withdrawn.
Obviously, a smart thing to do.
Whitley then warned Ackerman, who convinced Grant to declare martial law and send in U.S. Marshals, which were backed by federal troops, to arrest 500 KKK guys. Hundreds more fled the state, and hundreds of others surrendered in return for leniency.
Oh. In the first few years of Grant's first term, there were 1,000 indictments against Klan members, with over 550 convictions from the Department of Justice. By 1871, 3,000 indictments, 600 convictions, with most only serving brief sentences, while the ringleaders were in prison for up to 5 years in federal penitentiary in Albany, New York. The result was a dramatic decrease in violence in the South, I bet. Ackerman gave credit to Grant and told a friend that no one was better or stronger than Grant when it come to prosecuting terrorists. Ackerman's successor, George Williams, in December of 1871, continued to prosecute the Klan through 1872 until the spring of 1873, during Grant's second term. Williams's clemency and moratorium on Klan prosecutions was due in part to the fact that the Justice Department, having been inundated by Klan outrage cases, did not even have the effective manpower to continue prosecutions.
I mean, yeah. All right.
There's so many.
Right.
So many.
Let's take a look at the Naturalization Act of 1870. July 14th of that year, Grant signed into law the Naturalization Act of 1870 that allowed persons of African descent to become citizens of the United States.
Hey.
This revised an earlier law, which was the Naturalization Act of 1790, that only allowed white people of good moral character to become U.S. citizens. The law also prosecuted persons who use fictitious names, misrepresentations, or identities of deceased individuals when applying for citizenship.
That happened a lot back then.
I'm sure it did. How are you going to fact check it?
Right.
That's all, folks.
Let's take a look at the Force Acts of 1870 and 1871. To add enforcement to the 15th Amendment, Congress passed an act that guaranteed the protection of the voting rights of African Americans. Grant signed a bill known as the Force Act of 1870. He signed that into law on the 31st of May, 1870. This law was designed to keep the Redeemers from acting or threatening African Americans. This act placed severe penalties on persons who use intimidation, bribery, or physical assault to prevent citizens from voting. and placed elections under federal jurisdiction.
Well, good for him. January 13th, 1871, he submitted to Congress a report on violent acts committed by the KKK in the South. March 23rd, he told a reluctant Congress the situation in the South was dire.
It's because half the Congress was in it, too.
Right, right. And federal legislation was needed that would secure life, liberty, and property, and the enforcement of the law in all parts of the United States. Grant stated that U.S. mail and the collection of revenue was in jeopardy. Congress investigated the Klan's activities and eventually passed the Force Act of 1871, which allowed the prosecution of the Klan. This act, also known as the KKK Act, and written by Representative Benjamin Butler, it was passed by Congress to specifically go after local units of the KKK.
Okay.
Damn, dude, I'm getting down on these guys like Trump and the immigrants.
Right.
Illegals.
Right. Although sensitive to charges of establishing a military dictatorship, Grant signed the bill into law on the 20th of April, 1871, after being convinced by Secretary of Treasury George Boutwell. He was convinced that federal protection was warranted,
I would say so, man.
having cited documented atrocities against the freedmen. This law allowed the president to suspend habeas corpus on armed combinations and conspiracies by the Klan. This act also empowered the president to arrest and break up disguised night marauders.
Marauders? The president's out there arresting people.
The actions of the Klan were defined as high crimes and acts of rebellion against the old United States of America.
You know, the KKK consisted of local secret organizations formed to violently oppose Republican rule during Reconstruction.
Oh, wow.
There was no organization above the local level. So it's not a national, right?
Right.
Wearing white hoods to hide their identity, the Klan would attack and threaten Republicans. The Klan was strong in South Carolina. The Klan is strong with this one.
Right.
In South Carolina between 68 and 70,
Okay.
South Carolina Governor Robert Scott, who was mired in corruption charges, he allowed the Klan to rise to power because he was probably in on them. Grant, who was fed up with their violent tactics, ordered the KKK to disperse from South Carolina, lay down their arms under the authority of the Enforcement Acts on October 12th, 1871.
Better do it.
Get out or else.
There was no response. So, on the 17th of October, 1871, Grant issued a suspension of habeas corpus in all 9 counties in South Carolina.
Jeez, there's only 9 counties in South Carolina? How many are there now?
Probably. Grant ordered federal troops in the state, who then captured the Klan, who were vigorously prosecuted by Attorney General Ackerman and Solicitor General Bristow. With the Klan destroyed, other white supremacist groups would emerge, including the White League and the Red Shirts.
Moves us to the Amnesty Act of 1872. Texas, they were readmitted into the Union March 30th, 1870.
Damn, that
Mississippi, February 23rd, 1870.
Damn.
Virginia, January 26th, 1870.
Holy shit.
Georgia, they became the last Confederate state to be readmitted on July 15th, 1870. Jeez. What the hell did they do before then?
Right.
All members of the House of Representatives and Senate were seated from the 10 Confederate states that seceded. Technically, the United States was again a united country.
Aw.
Well, to ease tensions, Grant signed the Amnesty Act of 1872 on May 23rd, which gave amnesty to former Confederates.
Yes.
This act allowed most former Confederates, who before the war had taken an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, to elected public office.
I swear I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to do it this time. I will uphold the Constitution this time.
This time. Only 500 former Confederates remained unpardonable and therefore forbidden to hold elected public office.
Take a look at the Public Credit Act. On taking office, Grant's first move was signing the act to strengthen the public credit, which the Republican Congress had just passed. It assured that all public debts, particularly war bonds, would be paid only in gold rather than in greenbacks. The price of gold in New York Exchange fell to $130 an ounce. Still a lot. The lowest point since the suspension of specie payments in 1862.
Well, May 19th, 1869, Grant protected the wages of those working for the U.S. government. In 1968, a law was passed that reduced the government working day to 8 hours. However, much of the law was later repealed, allowing day wages to be also reduced. To protect workers, Grant signed an executive order that no reduction shall be made in the wages, regardless of the reduction in hours for the government day workers.
Oh, okay. Take a look at Boutwell reforms.
Boutwell, sure.
Yeah, Boutwell. Treasury Secretary George Boutwell reorganized and reformed the United States Treasury by discharging unnecessary employees. He started sweeping changes in the Bureau of Engraving and Printing to protect the currency from counterfeiters. And he also revitalized tax collections to hasten the collection of revenue. These changes soon led to the Treasury to have a monthly surplus. By May of 1869, Boutwell reduced the national debt by $12 million. Holy shit. By September, the national debt was reduced by $50 million, which was achieved by selling a growing gold surplus at weekly auctions for greenbacks and buying back wartime bonds with the currency. The New York Tribune wanted the government to buy more bonds and greenbacks. The New York Times praised the Grant's administration's debt policy.
Okay. During the first 2 years of the administration with George Boutwell at the Treasury helm, expenditures had been reduced to $292 million in 1871, which was down from $322 in 1869.
Nice.
The cost of collecting taxes fell to 3.11% in 1871.
Holy shit.
Grant reduced the number of employees working in the government by 2,248 persons from 6,052.
Damn.
Well, on March 1st, 1869 to 3,804 on December 1st, 1871.
Fantastic.
Cut it in half almost, huh? He had increased tax revenues by $108 million from 1869 to 72. And during his first administration, the national debt fell from $2.5 billion to $2.2 billion.
Look at that.
$300 million bucks. All right.
Damn. In a rare case of preemptive reform during the Grant administration, Brevet Major General Alfred Pleasanton was dismissed for being unqualified to hold the position of Commissioner of Internal Revenue. In 1870, Pleasanton, a Grant appointment, approved an unauthorized $60,000 tax refund and was associated with an alleged unscrupulous Connecticut firm. Treasury Secretary George Boutwell promptly stopped the refund and personally informed Grant that Pleasanton was incompetent to hold office. Refusing to sign on Boutwell's request, Pleasanton protested openly before Congress. Grant removed Pleasanton before any potential scandal broke out.
Okay, buddy.
You got to go.
It's not going to save you. Because now we're going to take a look at something called the Gold Corner Conspiracy.
Oh, shit.
The New York Gold Conspiracy almost dismantled Grant's presidency. September of 1869, financial manipulators Jay Gould and Jim Fisk set up an elaborate scam to corner the New York gold market, buying up all the gold at the same time to drive up the price. The plan was to keep the government from selling gold, thus driving its price. Grant and Secretary of Treasury George Boutwell, they found out about the gold market speculation and ordered the sale of $4 million in gold on Black Friday. On Friday, September 23rd. They call it Black Friday. Gold and Fisk were thwarted, and the price of gold dropped.
Damn right.
The effects of releasing gold by Boutwell were disastrous, though. Stock prices plunged and food prices dropped, devastating farmers for years. Although the financial panic that followed was short-lived, the gold scandal overshadowed Grant's presidency.
Yeah.
Well,
Take a look at Grant's foreign affairs. He loved his foreign women.
his foreign gumans.
Grant was a man of peace and almost wholly devoted to domestic affairs.
Well,
They were
he was like, oh, these foreign chicks are...
right.
Let's check these out.
There were no foreign policy disasters and no wars to engage in. Besides Grant himself, the main players in foreign affairs were the Secretary of State Hamilton Fish and the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Charles Sumner.
That guy's still kicking about, huh?
They had to cooperate to get a treaty ratified. When Sumner stopped Grant's plan to annex Santo Domingo,
We'll get to that.
Grant had his vengeance by systematically destroying Sumner's power and ending his career. Damn. Historians have high regard for the diplomatic professionalism, independence, and good judgment of Hamilton Fish.
Good.
The main issues involved Britain, Canada, Santo Domingo, Cuba, and Spain. Worldwide, it was a peaceful era, with no major wars directly affecting the United States, except for fighting the old savages in the plains.
All right. The foreign policy of the administration was generally successful, except for the attempt to annex Santo Domingo. The annexation of Santo Domingo was Grant's effort to create a haven for blacks in the South, and was a first step to end slavery in Cuba and Brazil. So let's send them all over there. The dangers of a confrontation with Britain on the Alabama question. A series of demands for damages sought by the government of the United States from the United Kingdom in 1869 for attacks upon Union merchant ships. By Confederate ships built in British shipyards. Get out of here.
Get out of here.
Idiots. Anyways, those were resolved peacefully and to the monetary advantage of the United States. So apparently we got paid.
Good for them.
Issues regarding the Canadian boundary were easily settled.
Okay.
The achievements were the work of Secretary Hamilton Fish, who was a spokesman for caution and stability. Speaking of that, Santo Domingo and the failed annexation of it.
Which is the Dominican Republic.
Right. Grant gave a high priority to protecting and improving the status of blacks in the United States and tried to ship them out to the Caribbean country of the Dominican Republic.
That's fucking insane.
As a safety valve for them. Senator Charles Sumner was even more firmly devoted to black interests and opposed Grant's scheme. Sumner stopped the plan, and Grant retaliated by destroying Sumner's power. 1869, Grant proposed to annex the independent Spanish-speaking black nation of the Dominican Republic, which was then known as Santo Domingo. Previously, in 1868, President Johnson had proposed annexation, but Congress refused.
Ooh.
Why would they want to send a bunch of African Americans down to a Spanish-speaking place? They'll be even more out of place.
Yeah.
And then what are they going to do? They're going to displace the Santo Domingans.
Right. It just didn't seem right. In July of 1869, Grant sent Orville Babcock and Rufus Ingalls, who negotiated a draft treaty with Dominican Republic President Buenaventura Baez to keep the island nation and Baez secure in power. Grant ordered naval ships to secure the island from invasion and internal insurrection. Baez signed an annexation treaty on the 19th of November, 1869. Secretary Fish drew up a final draft of the proposal and offered $1.5 million to the Dominican national debt. The annexation of Santo Domingo as an American state, the United States acquisition of the rights for Samana Bay for 50 years with an annual $150,000 rental. And he also guaranteed protection from foreign intervention. I mean, that's a pretty good deal.
Wow.
On the 10th of January, 1870, Santo Domingo Treaty was submitted to the Senate for ratification. Grant made the mistake of not building support in Congress or the country at large.
Yeah, because not only did Grant believe that the island would be of strategic value to the Navy,
It would have been.
particularly Samana Bay,
It would have been.
but also he sought to use it as a bargaining chip in domestic affairs.
That's also as well.
By providing a haven for the freedmen, he believed that the exodus of black labor would force Southern whites to realize the necessity of such a significant workforce and accept their civil rights.
Like, hey, man, you guys can come back. You just got to give me a couple months for these frickin' crackers down here to realize what's going
how
on.
much they miss you.
Right.
He hoped that the U.S. ownership of the island would push Spain to abolish slavery in Cuba and Puerto Rico, and perhaps Brazil as well.
Oh.
March 15th, 1870, the Foreign Relations Committee, which was headed by Sumner, recommended against the treaty passage.
Yeah, they could have done something, like spruce it up a little bit to make it work.
Wait, this dude's the leading spokesman for the African American civil rights, but he doesn't want... I mean, right, who would think it was a good idea to ship a bunch of African Americans somewhere anyway?
All the other stuff was a good idea for Santo Domingo, but not that part. Sumner, the leading spokesman for the African American civil rights, he believed that annexation would be enormously expensive, it would, and involve the United States in an ongoing civil war, and would threaten the independence of Haiti and the West Indies, thereby blocking black political progress. Possible, I forgot about Haiti and the West Indies. Sons of bitches, take them over too. On May 31st, 1870, Grant went before Congress and urged passage of the Dominican Annexation Treaty. Strongly opposed to ratification, Sumner successfully led the opposition in the Senate. 30th of June, 1870, Santo Domingo Annexation Treaty failed. 28 votes in favor of the treaty and 28 votes against. Grant's cabinet was divided over the Santo Domingo annexation attempt, and Bancroft Davis, assistant to Secretary Hamilton Fish, was secretly given info to Senator Sumner on State Department negotiations.
Oh,
you traitor. You fucking traitor.
Wait a minute, it was 28 to 28, so who got the deciding vote then?
All right, the head of the Senate,
Is
right?
it Republicans for the Senate?
I don't know.
Weird. Grant, he was determined to keep
I
the
think I have
Dominican
2/3.
Republic.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
2/3.
Grant was determined to keep the Dominican Republic Treaty in the public debate, mentioning Dominican Republic annexation in his December 1870 State of the Union address. December.
This dude's adamant.
Grant, he was able to get Congress in January 1871 to create a special commission to investigate the island. Senator Sumner, he continued to vigorously oppose and speak out against annexation.
Yeah.
Grant then appointed Frederick Douglass, who was an African-American civil rights activist, as one of the commissioners who voyaged to the Dominican Republic. He's like, this place is fucking trash.
Right.
Returned to the United States after several months, the commission in April 1871 issued a report that it stated the Dominican people desired annexation and that the island would be beneficial to the United States. Of course they would say that.
Right. Like, oh, yeah, they're for it. To celebrate the commission's return, Grant invited the commissioners to the White House, except for Frederick Douglass, because blacks weren't allowed in the White House unless he was serving them food. Right?
That's fucked up.
African-American leaders were very upset at this, and the issue of Douglass not being invited to the White House was brought up during the 1872 presidential election by Horace Greeley. Douglass, however, who was personally disappointed for not being invited, he remained loyal to Grant and the Republican Party.
Oh.
Although the commission supported Grant's annexation attempt, there was not enough enthusiasm in Congress to vote on a second annexation treaty.
I mean, yeah, no, if somebody's not enthused, they're not going to do that.
Right.
Unable constitutionally to go directly after Senator Sumner, Grant immediately removed Sumner's close and respected friend, who was Ambassador John Lothrop Motley.
This dude is...
Just remove him.
Yeah.
Well, he's a senator. I guess you can't. With Grant's prodding in the Senate, Sumner was finally deposed from the Foreign Relations Committee.
Okay.
Grant then reshaped his coalition known as New Radicals, working with enemies of Sumner such as Ben Butler of Massachusetts, Roscoe Conklin of New York, that's a South name, and Oliver P. Morton of Indiana, giving in to Fish's demands that Cuba rebels be rejected, and moving his southern patronage from the radical blacks and carpetbaggers who were allied with Sumner to more moderate Republicans.
Okay.
This set the stage for the liberal Republican revolt of 1872, when Sumner and his allies publicly denounced Grant and supported Horace Greeley with the liberal Republicans.
All right.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, a congressional investigation in June 1870 led by Senator Carl Schurz revealed that Babcock and Ingalls, they both had land interests in the Bay of Samana.
Oh, jeez.
And that land interest would increase dramatically in value if the Santo Domingo Treaty were ratified. I see. U.S. Navy ships, with Grant's authorization, had been sent to protect Baez from an invasion by a Dominican rebel, Gregorio Luperon, while the treaty negotiations were taking place. The investigation had initially been called to settle a dispute between an American businessman, Davis Hatch, against the United States government. Baez had imprisoned Hatch without trial for his opposition to Baez's government. Hatch had claimed that the United States had failed to protect him from imprisonment. The majority of congressional report dismissed Hatch's claim and exonerated both Babcock and Ingalls. The Hatch incident, however, kept certain senators from being enthusiastic about ratifying the treaty.
There's always something, and there's another thing called the Treaty of Washington.
Oh, son of a bitch.
Historians have credited the Treaty of Washington for implementing international arbitration to allow outside experts to settle disputes. Grant's able Secretary of State Hamilton Fish had orchestrated many of the events leading up to the treaty. Previously, Secretary of State William Seward, during the Johnson administration, first proposed an initial treaty which concerned damages done to the American merchants by 3 Confederate warships, the CSS Florida, Alabama, and Shenandoah, that were built in Britain. These damages were collectively known as the Alabama Claims.
Yes. Well, these 3 ships had inflicted tremendous damage to United States shipping, as insurance rates soared and shippers switched to British ships. Washington wanted the British to pay heavy damages.
How many shippers can ship to British ships if British ships could ship to shippers?
Washington wanted the British to pay heavy damages, perhaps including turning over Canada.
Yeah, why were they allowing Confederate ships to be built in their ports anyway?
That's crazy. Later, the United States added the British blockade runners to the claims, stating that they were responsible for prolonging the war by 2 years by smuggling in weapons through the Union blockade to the Confederacy, which did happen.
April 1869, the U.S. Senate overwhelmingly rejected a proposed treaty that paid too little and contained no admission of British guilt for prolonging the war.
Yeah.
Senator Charles Sumner, he spoke up before Congress, publicly denounced Queen Victoria, demanded a huge reparation, and opened the possibility of Canada ceded to the United States' payment.
Yeah. See, it's not the first time.
Guys just want land, I swear. The speech angered the British government, and talks had to be put off until matters cooled down.
Ooh.
Negotiations for a new treaty began January 1871 when Britain, they sent Sir John Rose to America to meet with Fish. A Rose meeting with a fish.
A joint high commission was created on the 9th of February, 1871, consisting of representatives from both Britain and U.S., obviously. The commission created a treaty where an international tribunal would settle the damage amounts. Would settle the damage amounts. The British admitted regret, not fault, over the destructive actions of the Confederate war cruisers, nor that charges of blockade running were included in the treaty. Grant approved and signed May 8th, 1871. The Senate ratified the Treaty of Washington on the 24th of May, 1871.
Well, the tribunal met on neutral territory in Geneva, Switzerland. Oh, the old Geneva. The panel of 5 international arbitrators included Charles Francis Adams, who was counseled by William Evarts, Caleb Cushing, and Morrison Waite. August 25th, 1872, the tribunal awarded the United States $15.5 million in gold. $1.9 million was awarded to Great Britain. For what? Historian Amos Elwood Corning, he noted the Treaty of Washington in arbitration bequeathed to the world a priceless legacy. In addition to the $15.5 million arbitration award, the treaty resolved some disputes over borders and fishing rights.
Oh.
Well, this is still going on. We got some Native American and their affairs. After the very bloody frontier wars in the 1860s, Grant, he sought to build a peace policy towards the tribes. He emphasized appointees who wanted peace and were favorable towards religious groups. In the end, however, the Western warfare grew worse. Grant declared in his 1869 inaugural address that he favored any course toward them which tends to their civilization and ultimate citizenship. In a bold step, Grant appointed his aide, General Eli Parker. His Seneca Indian name is Donahagawa. He's the first Native American Commissioner of Indian Affairs.
Fantastic.
Right, how do you have a Commissioner of Indian Affairs and have some white guy?
Right.
Parker met some opposition in the Senate until Attorney General Hoare said Parker was legally able to hold the office. Senate confirmed Parker by a vote of 36 to 12. During his tenure, Native wars dropped from 101 in 1869 to 58 in 1870. 58 wars. That's stupid.
Early on, Grant met with tribal chiefs of the Choctaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Chickasaw nations who expressed
He's
interest.
like, I only want to meet with the C's.
Right. He ain't messing with the other guys. And the Chickasaw nations who expressed interest to teach wild natives outside their own settled districts farming skills.
Non-domesticated.
I think they know how to farm. Well, probably not. Grant told the native chiefs that American settlement would lead to an inevitable conflict, but that the march to civilization would lead to pacification. 10th of April, 1869, Congress created the Board of Indian Commissioners. Grant appointed volunteer members who were eminent for their intelligence and philanthropy. The Grant Board was given extensive joint power with Grant. Secretary of Interior Cox and the Interior Department supervised the Bureau of Indian Affairs and civilized Native Americans.
No natives were appointed to the committee, only European Americans.
Oh, wow.
The commission monitored purchases and began to inspect native agencies. It attributed much of the trouble in native country to the encroachment of whites, clearly. The board approved of the destruction of native culture.
Oh, wow.
The natives were to be instructed in Christianity, agriculture, representative government, and assimilated on reservations.
Oh, son of a bitch.
Yeah, so that's his plan for everything. Let's move the blacks down to the damn South America, and let's just put Indians on these little lands that have one tree on the whole fucking 700 acres.
Jeez.
Let's take a look at old Red Cloud. He's going to have a White House visit, but they won't let Frederick Douglass in, but they'll let Red Cloud. Grant's peace policy received a boost when the chief of the Oglala Sioux, Red Cloud, Maipialuta, and Brule Sioux Spotted Tail, they arrived in Washington, D.C. and met Grant at the White House for a bountiful state dinner, May 7th, 1870. Red Cloud had a previous meeting with Secretary Cox and Commissioner Parker. He complained that promised rations and arms for hunting had not been delivered. Afterward, Grant and Cox lobbied Congress for the promised supplies and rations. Congress responded July 15, 1870. Grant signed the Indian Appropriations Act into law that appropriated the tribal monies.
2 days after the Spotted Tail urged the Grant administration to keep white settlers from invading native reservation land, Grant ordered all generals in the West to keep intruders off by military force if necessary. Oh, well. 1871, Grant, he signed another Indian Appropriations Act that ended the government policy of treating tribes as independent sovereign nations. Natives would be treated as individuals or wards of the state, and Indian policies would be legislated by congressional statutes.
Well, speaking of that peace policy, let's take a look at it. At the core of that policy was placing the Western reservations under the control of religious denominations. No. 1872, the implementation of the policy involved the allotting of Indian reservations to religious organizations as exclusive religious domains.
Holy shit.
Jeez. Of the 73 agencies assigned, the Methodists received 14. The Orthodox Friends, they received 10.
Oh, wow.
Presbyterians received 9. The Episcopalians 8. The Roman Catholics 7. The Hicksite Friends, they received 6. The Baptists 5. The Dutch Reformed 5. The Congregationalists 3. Christians 2. Unitarians 2. American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions 1. And the Lutherans 1.
Lutheran, here you go, bud. Well, infighting...
There must be a lot of Methodists in the government.
There were. Infighting between competitive missionary groups over the distribution of agencies was detrimental.
Oh, geez, you got a bunch of missionary groups like rolling up their sleeves and duking it out.
Hey, come on,
That's
boy.
hilarious. There needs to be a movie about that.
Wow. The selection criteria were vague. Some critics saw the peace policy as violating Native American freedom of religion. And another setback, William Welsh, a prominent merchant, prosecuted the Bureau in a congressional investigation over malfeasance. Although Parker was exonerated, legislation passed in Congress that authorized the board to approve goods and services payments by vouchers from the Bureau. Parker resigned from office, and Grant replaced Parker with reformer Francis A. Walker.
All right. Well, we got some domestic affairs. First up
Holiday law.
is the Holidays Law. June 28th, 1870, Grant approved and signed legislation that made Christmas, December 25th, a legal federal public holiday in the national capital of Washington, D.C.
Fantastic.
According to historian Ron White, call him tater salad, Grant did this because of his passion to unify the nation.
Damn right.
Now the Indians get to celebrate because you just made them all friggin'. During the early 19th century in the United States, Christmas became more of a family-centered activity.
Aw.
Other holidays included in the law within Washington, D.C. were New Year, 4th of July, and Thanksgiving. The law affected 5,300 federal employees working in the District of Columbia, which is obviously... The legislation was meant to adopt to similar laws in states surrounding Washington and in every state of the Union.
Okay. 1862, during the American Civil War, President Lincoln signed into law the Morrill Bill that outlawed polygamy in all United States territories. Mormons who practiced polygamy in Utah, for the most part, resisted the Morrill Law and the territorial governor.
They said I can't have all. They said I can only have one wife.
Right. During the 1868 election, Grant had mentioned he would enforce the law against polygamy. Tensions began as early as 1870, when Mormons in Ogden, Utah, began to arm themselves and practice military drilling. They did. By the 4th of July, 1871, Mormon militia in Salt Lake City, Utah, were on the verge of fighting territorial troops. In the end, violence was averted. Old Brigham Young was a mean old bastard back then.
Grant, who believed Utah was in a state of rebellion, was determined to arrest those who practiced the polygamy outlawed under the Morrill Act. October 1871, hundreds of Mormons were rounded up by U.S. Marshals, put in a prison camp, arrested, and put on trial for polygamy.
Dude, the Mormons would, attack Indian tribes and just murder every single one of them.
They didn't play around,
Sons
man.
of bitches.
One convicted polygamist received a $500 fine and 3 years in prison under hard labor. November 20th, 1871, Mormon leader Brigham Young, in ill health, had been charged with polygamy as well.
Yes, he was.
There's a whole university named after the sick fuck.
Yes, there is.
I can't say sick fuck. Who am I? You want to have fucking 6 wives and they're okay with it? Who gives a shit?
Yeah, his great-great-great-grandson won the Super Bowl. Young's attorney stated that Young had no intention to flee to court. Other persons during the polygamy shutdown were charged with murder to intent to kill. Oh.
Murder with intent to kill.
With murder or intent to kill. The Morrill Act, however, proved hard to enforce since proof of marriage was required for conviction, right? There's never any proof.
Right.
Grant personally found polygamy morally offensive. On December 4th, 1871, Grant said polygamists in Utah were a remnant of barbarism, pugnant to their civilization, to decency, and to the laws of the United States of America, and to God.
Well, let's take a look at the Comstock Act. In March 1873, anti-obscenity moralists, led by Anthony Comstock, Secretary of the New York Society for the Suppression of Vice, easily secured passage of the Comstock Act, which made it a federal crime to mail articles for any indecent or immoral use.
All right.
Grant signed the bill after he was assured that Comstock would personally enforce it.
Fantastic.
Comstock, he went on to become a special agent of the post office, appointed by Secretary James Creswell. Comstock prosecuted pornographers, imprisoned abortionists, banned nude art, stopped mailing of information about contraception, and tried to ban what he considered bad books. I don't get why people don't want people to learn about contraception.
Right.
It's stupid.
Or nude stuff. If people are going to be nude, let them be nude.
Right.
During Grant's presidency, the early women's suffrage movement, led by Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, they gained national attention. Anthony lobbied for female suffrage, equal gender pay, still fighting on that, baby, and protection of property for women who resided in Washington, D.C. In April 1869, Grant, he signed into law the protection of married women's property from their husbands' debts and the ability for women to sue in court in Washington, D.C.
That is true. Husbands get into debt and they end up selling their wife shit because they can't pay it.
In March of 1870, Representative Samuel M. Arnell, he introduced a bill co-authored by suffragist Bennett Lockwood that would give women federal workers equal pay for equal work.
2 years later, Grant signed a modified Senate version of the Arnell bill into law. That law required all federal female clerks would be paid the fully compensated salary. However, lower-tiered female clerks were exempted.
Yes.
The law increased women's clerk salaries from 4% to 20% during the 1870s.
Damn, that's significant.
All right. However, the culture of patronage and patriarchy continued.
Of course, it's always going to be there.
To placate the burgeoning suffragist movement, the Republicans' platform included that women's rights should be treated with respectful consideration, while Grant advocated equal rights for all citizens, equal rights and left.
Take a look at the Yellowstone and the conversation of Yellowstone.
Yeah, eat that, Teddy Roosevelt. You're not the only one that loves Yellowstone.
Right. An endearing hallmark of Grant's administration was the creation of Yellowstone.
Sure was.
The world's first national park. Organized exploration of the upper Yellowstone River began in fall of 1869 when the Cook-Folsom-Peterson expedition made a month-long journey up the Yellowstone River and into the geyser basins. 1870.
Dangerous.
Right. 1870, the somewhat more official Washburn-Langford-Doane expedition explored the same regions of the upper Yellowstone and geyser basins, naming Old Faithful and many other park features. Official reports from Lieutenant Gustavus Cheney Doane and Schreiber's monthly accounts by Nathaniel Langford, they brought increased public awareness to the natural wonders of this very region. Like, it's freaking beautiful, guys. Check it out.
Influenced by Jay Cook of the Northern Pacific Railroad and Langford's public speeches about the Yellowstone on the East Coast, geologist Ferdinand Hayden, he sought funding from Congress for an expedition under the auspices of the U.S. Geological Survey.
Fantastic.
March 1871, Grant signed into law congressional legislation appropriating $40,000 to finance the survey of 1871. Hayden was given instructions by Grant's Secretary of Interior Columbus Delano. The expedition party was composed of 36 civilians, mostly scientists, I would hope, and 2 military escorts. You got to protect from the Indians.
Right.
Among the survey party were an artist, Thomas Morin, and photographer William Henry Jackson.
Oh, that's cool.
You got to draw on photographer what you see.
Right. Hayden's published reports, magazine articles, along with paintings by Moran and photographs by Jackson, convinced Congress to preserve the natural wonders of the upper Yellowstone.
This is beautiful.
It's great. They could have just lied and made stuff up.
Right. Meanwhile, they're just like spending on whores and shit.
Right. On December 18th, 1871, a bill was introduced simultaneously in the Senate by Senator C.S. Pomeroy of Kansas and in the House of Representatives by Congressman William Clagett of the Montana Territory for the establishment of a park in the headquarters of the Yellowstone River. Hayden's influence on Congress is readily apparent when examining the detailed information contained in the report of the House Committee on Public Lands. It says, the bill now before Congress has for its objective the withdrawal from settlement, occupancy, or sale under the laws of the United States a tract of land 55 by 65 miles.
Damn.
About the sources of the Yellowstone and Missouri rivers, and dedicates and sets apart as a great national park or pleasure ground for the benefit and enjoyment of the people.
Good for you.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, when the bill was presented to Congress, the bill's chief supporters, ably prepared by Langford, Hayden, and Jay Cook, they convinced their colleagues that the region's real value was as a park area to be preserved in its natural state.
Yes, don't fucking touch it.
The bill was approved by a comfortable margin in the Senate January 30th, 1872, and by the House February 27th. Don't know why it took so long.
Right.
March 1st, 1872, Grant played his role in signing the Act of Dedication into law. It established the Yellowstone region as the nation's first national park, made possible by 3 years of... Yes, we know. So, yeah, Yellowstone's first national park, guys. Why do they always
Here
say...
goes the regulations, so son of a bitch.
Right.
1872 Yellowstone Act prohibited fish and gaming, including buffalo, from the wanton destruction within the confines of the park.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. However, Congress did not appropriate funds or legislation for the enforcement against poaching. As a result, Secretary Delano could not hire people to aid tourists or protect Yellowstone from encroachment. By the 1880s, buffalo herds dwindled to only a few hundred, and majority found mostly in Yellowstone National Park.
Yep. And to this day, you can see a bunch of ignorant tourists get gored by them on a daily.
Gored, and things are sizes of buses.
Yeah.
As the Indian Wars ended, Congress appropriated money enforcement legislation in 1894, signed into law by President Grover Cleveland, that protected and preserved buffalo and other wildlife in Yellowstone. Grant also signed into legislation that protected northern fur seals on Alaska's Pribilof Islands. This was the first law in U.S. history that specifically protected wildlife on federally owned land.
Well, speaking of those buffalo herds, let's take a look at the end of those buffalo herds. Because in 1872, around 2,000 white buffalo hunters working between Kansas and Arkansas, they were killing buffalo for their hides by the many thousands. The demand was for boots for European armies or machine belts attached to steam engines. Oh, right. Damn Industrial Revolution. Acres of land were dedicated solely for drying the hides of the slaughtered buffalo. Native Americans, they protested at the wanton destruction of their food supply. Between 1872 and 74, the buffalo herd south of the Platte River yielded 4.4 million kills by white hunters and about 1 million animals killed by Indians.
5.5 million buffalo, dude. That's
gone.
A lot. You can imagine them roaming around. It had to be like herds of
course,
hundreds of thousands.
It'd be like going to
India.
It would be like
Dubai.
It would be like going to the woods and seeing squirrels.
No, more than that.
That's pretty much what it was. How many buffaloes are there now? It's about only 444,000, 500,000 in the United States, and that's all in the like the Yellowstone
Montana and all that.
and they're all protected. There's 31,000 wild bison in North America. Yeah, 444,000 in conservation or commercial herds, but only 31,000 wild. They were down to like
How many buffalo in 1700 right there?
60 million.
million buffalo. Talking about wiping out a freaking species.
They had just 541 animals by 1889. Holy moly, dude.
Popular concern for destruction of the buffalo mounted, and a bill in Congress passed, H.R. 921, that would have made buffalo hunting illegal for whites.
Just for whites.
Taking advice from Secretary Delano, Grant chose to pocket veto the bill, believing that the demise of the buffalo would reduce Indian wars and force tribes to stay on their respective reservations. No,
he's like, no, we want these buffalo to be gone because then the Indians have nothing. They got to totally rely on us.
And it would force the tribes to adopt an agricultural lifestyle rather than roaming the plains and hunting buffalo.
You still got to hunt, dude.
Right. Ranchers, they wanted the buffalo gone to open pasture land for their cattle herds. With the buffalo food supply lowered, Native Americans were forced to stay on their reservations and grow their corn.
Right. It's amazing. All right. Well, that's the end of the buffalo herds. Bye. Because Grant said, nope, I'm not passing no laws.
Yeah, that's insane.
Let's take a look at some. This is be the first of a couple. This is just his first term reforms and scandals. We'll have more in a second term coming up. Let's take a look at Civil Service Commission. The reform of the spoils system of political patronage entered the national agenda after the Grant presidency and would take on the fervor of a religious revival. The distribution of federal jobs by congressional legislatures was considered vital for their reelection to Congress. Grant, he required that all applicants to federal jobs apply directly to the department heads rather than the president.
Oh.
Well, why, of course. Two of Grant's appointments, Secretary of Interior Jacob Cox and Secretary of Treasury George Boutwell, they put in place examinations in their respective departments advocated by reformers. Well, yeah, why would the president interview all these guys?
Right.
That's what you got these guys for.
He's killing buffalo. Let him alone. Grant, all reformers agreed that the prevailing system of appointments was unsound, for it maximized party advantage and minimized efficiency and the nonpartisan interest of good government.
Right, just giving favors to people that are with you. Yeah.
Some people say his efforts at civil service reform weren't very honest, but they were met with criticism from all sides and were a failure. Grant, he was the very first president that recommended professional civil service. Oh. He pushed the initial legislation through Congress and appointed the members of the very first United States Civil Service Commission, the USCCC. No, USCSC.
Right. The temporary commission recommended administering competitive exams and issuing regulations on the hiring and promotion of government employees. Grant, he then ordered their recommendations in effect 1872, having lasted for 2 years until December of 1874. Oh. At the New York Custom House, a port that took in hundreds of millions of dollars a year in revenue, applicants for an entry position now had to pass a written civil service examination. Chester Arthur, who was appointed by Grant, he's a future president.
No.
Chester Arthur?
Chester
Fuck yeah, he is.
B. Arthur.
Chester A. Arthur.
I don't know about that.
Fuck yeah, dude. The 21st president of the United States of America, 1880, right after Grant.
He was?
Sure
that
was.
B. Arthur.
No. Yeah, he was appointed by Grant as New York custom collector. He stated that the examinations excluded and deterred unfit persons from getting employment positions. Yeah, isn't that the way you should want it?
Well, however, Congress, no mood to reform
Oh,
itself.
go figure. It's been this way for 300 years now.
It denied any long-term reform by refusing to enact the necessary legislation to make the changes permanent. Historians have traditionally been divided whether patronage, meaning appointments made without a merit system, should be labeled corruption.
I mean, I think maybe not corruption, but definitely dumb.
Right. The movement for civil service reform reflected two distinct objectives. One, eliminate the corruption and inefficiencies in a non-professional bureaucracy, and two, to check the power of the President Johnson.
Although many reformers after the election of 1868 looked to Grant to ram civil service legislation through Congress, he refused, saying civil service reform rests entirely with Congress. If members will give up claim and patronage, that will be a step gained. But there's an immense amount of human nature in the members of Congress, and it is human nature to seek power and to use it to help friends.
No.
You cannot call it corruption. It is a condition of our representative form of government.
I mean, that's true.
I guess. Grant, he used patronage to build his party and help his friends.
He sure now did. So did Lincoln.
So did every president, I would assume. He protected those whom he thought were the victims of injustice or attacks by his enemies, even if they were guilty.
Ooh.
Grant, he believed in loyalty to his friends, as one writer called it, the chivalry of friendship.
Well,
That's the problem as
chivalry's dead.
That's the problem as well.
Yeah, I mean, you got to draw the line.
Yeah.
It's not personal, it's business, baby.
Should be like a sweepstakes at some business or something. No family members or anything can be a part of it. Well, no family members or friends can be in your cabinet.
Yeah. Yeah, just enemies. Love it. Take a look at the New York Custom House ring. Prior to the presidential election of 1872, 2 congressional and 1 Treasury Department investigations took place over corruption at the New York Custom House under Grant collector appointments, Moses Grinnell and Thomas Murphy. Private warehouses were taking imported goods from the docks, charging shippers storage fees.
Oh, jeez.
Grant's friend, George K. Leet, was allegedly involved with exorbitant pricing for storing goods and splitting the profits. Oh, man, that's bullshit. It's not bad enough, all the shit they got to pay on the ship.
Right. Ship.
Yep.
Ship.
Grant's third collector appointment, Chester A. Arthur,
The future president.
implemented Secretary of Treasury George Boutwell's reform to keep the goods protected on the docks rather than private storage.
Good for you, Chester.
Yeah, look at you, bud. You wasn't terrible and he wasn't a great president.
Well, there's that. Let's take a look at the Star Route postal ring.
Oh, no.
Also known as the Star Route scandal.
Oh, shit.
In the early 1870s, during the Grant, obviously, lucrative postal route contracts were given to local contractors on the Pacific coast and southern regions of the U.S. These were known as star routes because an asterisk was given on official post office documents.
Okay.
These remote routes were hundreds of miles long and went to the most rural parts of the United States by horse and buggy. It's kind of like the Pony Express,
Right.
basically.
Yeah.
In obtaining these highly prized postal contracts, probably paid you a lot of money as well. An intricate ring of bribery and straw bidding was set up in the postal contract office. The ring consisted of contractors, postal clerks, and various intermediary brokers. Damn, dude, anything to get some corrupt shit and do some stuff.
Straw bidding was at its highest practice, while John Creswell, Grant's 1869 appointment, he was the Postmaster General. 1872 federal investigation into the matter exonerated Creswell, but he was censured by the minority House report. A $40,000 bribe to the 42nd Congress by one postal contractor had tainted the results of the investigation.
Oh.
1876, another congressional investigation under a Democratic House shut down the postal ring for a few years.
That's a few years. That's after Grant's presidency. So,
How fast
you guys want to look up that Star Route scandal? There's a lot more to it because it
Yeah.
wasn't just for Grant, apparently. Let's take a look at something called the salary grab. March 3rd, 1873, Grant signed a law that authorized the president's salary to be increased from $25,000 a year to $50,000 a year,
Oh,
and congressmen's salaries to be increased by $2,500. Representatives also received a retroactive pay bonus for the previous 2 years of service. This was done in secret and attached to a general appropriations bill, just like they always are. Reforming newspapers quickly exposed the law, and the bonus was repealed in January of 1874. Grant, he missed an opportunity to veto the bill and make a strong statement for good government. Oh, jeez. Because he knew, of course he wanted another $25,000 a year. Dude was already crying about being broke
Right.
before he even got president.
that would be nice.
Good Lord, man.
Let's take a look at that election of 1872. As his first term entered its final year, Grant remained popular throughout the nation, despite the accusations of corruption that were swirling around his administration. When the Republicans gathered for the 1872 National Convention, he was unanimously nominated for a second term. Henry Wilson, he was selected as his running mate over scandal-tainted Vice President Schuyler Colfax.
We gotta get you out of here, Schuyler.
Gotta go, bud. The party platform advocated high tariffs and a continuation of radical Reconstruction policies that supported 5 military districts in the southern states. Damn, military districts. Holy shit.
Well, during Grant's first term, a significant number of Republicans had become completely disillusioned with the party. Wary of the scandals and opposed to several of Grant's policies, split from the party they did to form the Liberal Republican Party. Yeah, that doesn't go together.
Right.
At the party's only national convention held in May of 1872, New York Tribune editor Horace Greeley was nominated for president, and Benjamin Gratz Brown for vice president.
Fantastic.
They advocated civil service reform, a low tariff, and granted amnesty to former Confederate soldiers. They also wanted to end Reconstruction and restore local self-government in the South.
I mean, got to get done. Democrats at this time had no strong candidate choice of their own, saw an opportunity to consolidate the anti-Grant vote, and jumped on the Greeley bandwagon, reluctantly adopting Greeley and Brown as their nominees.
Oh.
It is the only time in American history when a major party endorsed a candidate of a third party. Oh, shit. While Grant, like an incumbent presidents before him, he did not even campaign. An efficient party organization composed of thousands of patronage appointees did so on his behalf. Must be nice. Frederick Douglass supported Grant and reminded black voters that Grant had destroyed the violent KKK.
He might have destroyed the KKK, and he might not have let me into the White House with all the other white folks, but he's still a good guy.
They sent me out a plate, though.
Greeley, he embarked on a 5-state campaign tour in late September, during which he delivered nearly 200 speeches. His campaign was plagued by misstatements and embarrassing moments.
Oh, wow.
However, because of political infighting between liberal Republicans and Democrats, of course, and due to several campaign blunders, the physically ailing Greeley was no match for Grant. He won in a landslide.
I bet he did.
He got 286 to the 352 Electoral College votes.
Damn, well, I guess there's a lot of Democrats still.
All right. And received 55.8% of the popular vote.
Oh, shit.
President's re-election victory also brought an overwhelming Republican majority into both houses and of Congress, and heartbroken after a hard-fought political campaign, Greeley, he died a few weeks after the election.
Oh, shit.
Out of respect for Greeley, Grant attended his funeral.
Oh, obviously. Jeez. What do you
Jeez, so we were about to nominate or elect a guy that was about to be dead anyway?
Son of a bitch. That's probably what they wanted.
Yep, son of a bitch.
Take a look at the second term, 1873 to 1877. Second inauguration of Grant's presidency was held on a Tuesday, the 4th of March, 1873. Commencing the second term of his presidency. 4-year term. Commencing the second 4-year term of his presidency. Subsequently, the inaugural ball ended earlier when the food froze. Departing from the White House, the parade escorted Grant down the newly paved Pennsylvania Avenue, which was all decorated with banners and flags. On to the swearing-in ceremony in front of the Capitol building. That's where they went. Chief Justice Salmon P. Chase administered the presidential oath of office.
Well, yeah, because that food froze because this was one of the coldest inaugurations in U.S. history, with the temperature at only 6 degrees at sunrise.
Ooh.
After the swearing-in ceremony, the inaugural parade commenced down Pennsylvania, like we said. The Evening Star observed, the private stands and windows along the entire route were crowded to excess.
Oh.
The parade consisted of a variety of military units along with marching bands and civic organizations. The military units in their fancy regalia were the most noticeable,
Right,
of course.
obviously.
Together, there were approximately 12,000 marchers who participated, including several units of African-American soldiers.
Fantastic.
Right.
Good for you guys. Well, on to the inaugural ball. There were about 6,000 people in attendance. Great care was taken to ensure that Grant's inaugural ball would be in a spacious quarters and would feature an elegant assortment of appetizers, food, and champagne. A large temporary wooden building was constructed at Judiciary Square to accommodate the event. Grant, he arrived around 11:30 p.m., and the dancing began.
And the dancing and drunkenness began.
It was the only term of Henry Wilson as vice president. Well, obviously. Well, I guess he could be vice president of somebody else.
Well, though he couldn't have.
Oh, well, he died 2 years, 263 days into his term, and the office remained vacant for the balance of
Yeah,
it.
no vice president for 2 years, huh? Jeez. Let's take a let's take a little bit of a look at this Reconstruction we've been hinting at. Grant, he was vigorous in his reinforcement or his enforcement of the 14th and 15th Amendments,
Right.
and prosecuted thousands of persons who violated African American
You
civil
got
rights.
to, man. If you're going to do that, you got to be strong on it.
You would think he used military force to put down political insurrections in Louisiana, Mississippi, and South Carolina.
Damn.
He proactively used military and Justice Department enforcement of civil rights laws and the protection of African Americans more than any other 19th century president. And like we already know, he used his full powers to weaken the KKK, reducing violence and intimidation in the South.
All right. Good for you, bud. He then appointed James Milton Turner as the first African American minister to a foreign nation. Grant's relationship with Charles Sumner, the leader in the promoting civil rights, it was shattered by the senator's opposition to Grant's plan to acquire Santo Domingo by treaty.
Yeah.
Grant retaliated, firing men Sumner had recommended and having allies strip Sumner of his chairmanship of the Foreign Relations Committee. Sumner then joined a liberal Republican movement in 1872 to fight Grant's reelection. He lost. You lost, Sumner.
Well, conservative resistance to the Republican state governments grew after the 1872 elections. With the destruction of the Klan in 1872, new secret paramilitary organizations arose in the Deep South.
Damn right it did.
Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Louisiana. The Red Shirts and the White League operated openly and were better organized than the KKK.
Damn.
Their goals were to oust the Republicans, return conservative whites to power, and use whatever illegal methods needed to achieve them.
Oh.
Being loyal to his veterans, Grant remained determined that African Americans would receive protection.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Yep, that's about it for that.
Let's take a look at the Colfax Massacre. After the 4th of November 1872 election, Louisiana was a split state. Controversial election it was. 2 candidates were claiming victory as governor.
Oh.
Violence was used to intimidate black Republicans. The Fusionist Party of liberal Republicans and Democrats claimed John McHenry as the victor, while the Republicans claimed United States Senator William P. Kellogg as the governor. 2 months later, each candidate was sworn in as governor on January 13th, 1873. A federal judge ruled that Kellogg was the rightful winner of the election and ordered him and the Republican-based majority to be seated.
Oh.
The White League supported McHenry and prepared to use military force to remove Kellogg from office. Oh, shit. Grant ordered troops to enforce the court order and protect Kellogg. On the 4th of March, federal troops under a flag of truce and Kellogg's state militia defeated McHenry's Fusionist Party's insurrection. Oh.
Good for you guys. A dispute arose over who would be installed as judge and sheriff at the Colfax Courthouse in Grant Parish. Kellogg's 2 appointees had seized control of the courthouse on March 25th.
Motherfucker just seizing control. I'm judge.
That was with the aid of and protection of black state militia troops. Then, April 13th, White League forces attacked the courthouse and massacred 50 black militiamen who had been captured.
Holy shit.
Total of 105 blacks were killed trying to defend the Colfax Courthouse for Governor Kellogg.
Son of a bitch.
April 21st, Grant sent in the U.S. 19th Infantry to restore order. May 22nd, he issued a new proclamation to restore order in Louisiana. May 31st, McHenry, he finally told his followers to obey preemptory orders of the president. I mean, yeah.
Right.
The orders brought a brief peace to New Orleans and most of Louisiana, except, ironically, Grant Parish.
That makes sense. Oh, wow.
Yeah, you guys can go look up that a little bit further. We're not getting into that. That'd be a whole probably episode on itself if we
might do it.
want.
Maybe. Let's take a look at Brooks-Baxter. It was the Brooks-Baxter War in Arkansas. Fall of 1872, the Republican Party split in Arkansas and 2 candidates for governor, again, Elisha Baxter and Joseph Brooks. Massive fraud characterized the election, but Baxter was declared the winner and took office. Brooks never gave up, and finally, in 1874, a local judge ruled Brooks was entitled to the office and swore him in.
Oh.
Both sides mobilized militia units and rioting and fighting and bloodied the streets.
Can you imagine if shit would happen nowadays, dude? Like,
Insane.
what is happening here?
speculation swirl as to who President Grant would side with, either Baxter or Brooks. I mean, look at the votes.
Right. Well,
whatever.
Grant, he delayed requesting a joint session of the Arkansas government to figure out peacefully who would be the governor, but Baxter refused to participate.
Ooh.
May 15th, 1874, Grant issued a proclamation that Baxter was the legitimate governor of Arkansas.
Oh, that little bastard didn't even want to participate.
Right, and hostilities ceased.
Oh, I guess.
King Grant spoke.
Right.
In the fall of 1874, the people of Arkansas voted out Baxter, and the Republicans and Redeemers came to power.
That shit.
Okay, well, yeah, votes were heard, I guess.
Wow. A few months later, in early 1875, Grant announced that Brooks had been legitimately elected back in 1872.
Oh, jeez.
Grant did not send in troops. Brooks never regained office.
Damn.
Instead, Grant appointed him to the high-paying patronage job of United States Postmaster in Little Rock. Dude, why be governor? You can be postmaster and make way much more.
And do nothing.
Right. Grant's legalistic approach did resolve the conflict peacefully, but it left the Republican Party in Arkansas in total disarray and further discredited Grant's reputation.
Yeah, this guy just don't know what he's doing, apparently.
Right.
Well,
Ooh.
a little close to Grant's heart is Vicksburg, but there were some riots happening in August of 1874. The Vicksburg city government elected white Reform Party candidates consisting of Republicans and Democrats. Well, they promised to lower city spending and taxes. Despite such intentions, the reform movement turned racist when the new white city officials went after the county government, which had a majority of African Americans.
Son of a bitch.
The White League threatened the life of and expelled Crosby, who was the black Warren County sheriff and tax collector.
Son of a man.
Crosby sought help from the Republican governor Adelbert Ames to regain his position as sheriff.
I thought it was at Mesto.
Adelbert Armesto.
Mesto. Governor Ames told him to take other African Americans and use force to
He
retain
said,
his
beat their
office."
asses. What are you doing?
At that time, Vicksburg had a population of 12,443, more than half of whom were black.
Oh.
On December 7th, 1874, Crosby and an African American militia approached Vicksburg. He had said that the whites were ruffians, barbarians, and political banditti. A series of confrontations occurred against white paramilitary forces that resulted in the deaths of 29 African Americans and 2 whites. The white militia retained control of the county courthouse and the jail.
Oh, jeez. Well, Grant, with his old proclamations, he issued another one on December 21st for the people in Vicksburg to stop fighting. I hereby order you to stop fighting.
All right.
General Philip Sheridan, he was based in Louisiana for this regional territory. He dispatched federal troops who reinstated Crosby as sheriff and restored the peace.
Oh, look at that. That's all you had to do in the beginning.
Right. When questioned about the matter, Governor Ames denied that he told Crosby to use the African-American militia.
Of course.
June 7th, 1875, Crosby was shot in the head by a white deputy while drinking in a bar. He survived, but never fully recovered from his injuries.
Damn it.
The origins of the shooting remain a mystery
I'm
to
sure.
this very day.
I don't think it remains a mystery. It's just no one's talking.
Damn, one of his own damn deputies shot him in the head? Good Lord, what's going on? What's going on in America right now? This is worse than the Civil War.
It's insane. Take a look at the Louisiana Revolt and coup.
Yeah, might as well.
On the 14th of September, 1874, the White League and Democratic militia took control of the State House at New Orleans, and the Republican governor, William Kellogg, was forced to flee. Oh, my goodness. What the hell's going on? Former Confederate General James A. Longstreet, with 3,000 African-American militia, 400 Metropolitan Popo, made a counterattack on the 8,000 White League troops.
Wait a minute.
That's a battle here, boys.
Wait a minute. Old Longstreet is over here leading some African Americans? What the fuck is happening? The world's flipped upside down.
Holy shit.
Wow.
Consisting of former Confederate soldiers and experienced White League troops, routed Longstreet's army.
Oh, jeez.
On September 17th.
Maybe he just didn't care. He was like, bend
September-
those hips.
Right.
Remember now, it's all in the hips.
On September 17th, 1874, Grant sent in federal troops, and they restored the government back to Kellogg.
Jeez. During the following controversial election in November, passions rose high and violence mixed with fraud were rampant. The state of affairs in New Orleans was becoming out of control. The results were that 53 Republicans, 53 Democrats were elected, with 5 remaining to be decided by legislature.
There you go.
Grant had been careful to watch the elections and secretly sent Sheridan in to keep law and order in the state.
You got to.
Sheridan arrived in New Orleans a few days before the January 4th, 75 elections. before the January 475 legislature opening meeting. At the conventions, the Democrats, again with military force, took control of the state building out of Republican hands. Good Lord, dude.
Holy shit.
There's a banana republic going on right now.
Wow. Initially, the Democrats were protected by federal troops under the Colonel Regis de Trobriand.
Oh, no.
And the escaped Republicans were removed from the hallways of the state building. However, Governor Kellogg then requested that Trobriand reseat the Republicans. Trobriand returned to the State House and used bayonets to force the Democrats out of the building. The Republicans then organized their own house with their own speakers, all being protected by the Federal Army. Sheridan, who had annexed the Department of Golf to his command at 9 p.m., he later claimed that the federal troops were being neutral, since they had also protected the Democrats earlier.
That's probably true.
Holy shit.
There's some shit going on in Louisiana.
Wow. Some coup.
Let's take a look at the Civil Rights Act of 1875. Throughout his presidency, Grant was continually concerned with the civil rights of all Americans, irrespective of nationality, color, or religion.
Okay.
Grant had no role in writing the Civil Rights Act of 1875, but he did sign it a few days before the Republicans lost control of the Congress.
Cool. All right.
I didn't write the Civil Rights Act of 1875, but I did stay in a Holiday Inn. The new law was designed to allow everyone access to public eating establishments, hotels, and places of entertainment.
Fantastic.
This was done particularly to protect African Americans who were discriminated across the United States.
It didn't help very much.
Right. The bill was also passed in honor of Senator Charles Sumner, who had previously attempted to pass the Civil Rights Bill in 72. And Grant's like, I hate you, but you had some good ideas.
Right. Grant's sixth message to Congress. He summed up his own views. While I remain executive, all the laws of Congress and all the provisions of the Constitution will be enforced with rigor. Treat the Negro as a citizen and a voter, as he is and must remain. Then we shall have no complaint of sectional interference, quote, unquote. In the pursued equal justice for all category from the 2009 C-SPAN presidential rating survey, Grant scored a 9, getting in the top 10.
Look at you, buddy.
The Civil Rights Act of 1875 proved of very little value to blacks. The Justice Department and the federal judges generally refused to even enforce it. And the Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional anyhow in 1883. Historian William Gillette calls it an insignificant victory.
All right, well, there's that. Don't worry, there'll be about 30 other civil rights acts in the coming years.
Yeah.
Well, apparently there's something going on in South Carolina in 1876. During the election year of that year, South Carolina was in a state of rebellion against Republican Governor Daniel Chamberlain. Conservatives, they were determined to win the election for ex-Confederate Wade Hampton through violence and intimidation. Republicans went on to nominate Chamberlain for a second term. Hampton supporters, donning red shirts, disrupted Republican meetings with gun shootings and yelling. Tensions became violent July 8th, 1876, when 5 African Americans were moited at Hamburg, South Carolina. Jeez.
Damn it. The rifle clubs wearing their red shirts were better armed than the blacks. South Carolina was ruled more by mobocracy and bloodshed than by Chamberlain's government. I mean, it's pretty much all everywhere. Anywhere that's not the North or like New York or Boston.
At this time, and everybody wants them to govern themselves now. They can't even do anything, even with...
Wow.
Jeez.
Black militia fought back in Charleston on 6th of September, 1876. In what was known as the King Street Riot. It's the King Street Riot. Right. The white militia assumed defensive positions out of concern over possible intervention from federal troops. Then, on the 19th of September, the red shirts took offensive action by openly killing between 30 and 50 African Americans outside Ellington. Oh, jeez. My goodness.
During the massacre, State Representative Simon Coker, he was killed. Oh, no.
Oh, shit.
October 7th. Governor Chamberlain declared martial law and told all the rifle club members to put down their weapons. In the meantime, Wade Hampton never ceased to remind Chamberlain that he did not rule South Carolina. Out of desperation, Chamberlain wrote to Grant and asked for federal intervention. The Canehoy riot took place October 15th when Republicans held a rally at Brick Church outside Canehoy.
Son of a bitch.
Dude, Wade Hampton, you're supposed to be like, you're this already a traitor.
Right.
Got let off for treason, and you're like letting this shit happen, dude. They should throw you in fucking jail right now.
Right. At this rally, blacks and whites both opened fire. 6 whites, 1 black, dead. Grant upset over
Black's favor this time, huh?
Grant upset over the Ellington and Kane Hoy riots. Finally declared a presidential proclamation.
He's the proclamation president.
Right, on 17th October 1876. He ordered all persons within 3 days to cease their lawless activities and disperse to their homes. A total of 1,144 federal infantrymen were sent to South Carolina, and the violence stopped. Election day, quiet. Both Hampton and Chamberlain claimed victory, of course, and for a while both acted as governor. Hampton took the office in 1877 after President Rutherford B. Hayes withdrew federal troops, and after Chamberlain left the state.
Damn, so Hampton got his way, huh? Oh, racist bastard. Oh, Lord. This presidency is a disaster.
It was bad.
All right, well, let's take a look at some financial affairs, and starting out with the Panic of 1873. Between 68 and 73, the American economy was robust, primarily caused by railroad building, manufacturing expansion, and thriving agricultural production.
Damn right.
Well, they're forcing Indians to do some shit. Financial debt, however, particularly in the railroad investment, spread throughout both the private and federal sectors.
Yeah, it was bound to happen.
The market began to break in July of 1873 when the Brooklyn Trust Company went broke and closed. Secretary Richardson, he sold gold to pay for $14 million in federal bonds. 2 months later, the panic collapsed the national economy.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
September 17th, the stock market crashed, followed by the New York Warehouse and Security Company, September 18th, and then the J and Cook Company on the 19th, both going bankrupt.
Jeez, that quick?
September 19th, Grant ordered Secretary Richardson, Boutwell's replacement, said, purchase $10 million in bonds, will you? Richardson complied, using greenbacks to expand the money supply. On the 20th of September, the New York Stock Exchange closed for 10 days. Ooh. Traveling in New York, Grant met with Richardson to consult with the bankers, who gave Grant conflicting financial advice.
Returning to Washington, Grant Richardson sent millions of greenbacks from the Treasury to New York to purchase bonds, stopping the purchases on September 24th. By the beginning of 1874, January, Richardson had issued a total of 26 million greenbacks from the Treasury Reserve into the economy, relieving Wall Street, but not stopping the national long depression that would last 5 more years.
I mean, what are you going to do?
Thousands of businesses depressed daily wages by 25% for 3 years and brought the unemployment rate up to 14%.
Damn.
That's great. Grant, you're not doing too hot, bud.
Right. Let's take a look at the inflation bill, which got vetoed in a compromise. Grant Richardson's mildly inflationary response to the Panic of 1873 encouraged Congress to pursue a more aggressive policy. The legality of releasing greenbacks was presumed to have been illegal. On April 14th, 1874, Congress passed the inflation bill that set the greenback maximum at $400,000, retroactively legalizing the 26 million reserve greenbacks earlier released by the Treasury. The bill released an additional 18 million in greenbacks, up to the original 400 million.
So it's supposed to be 400 million.
Right, 400 million.
Going to say 400,000. How does that legalize 26 million?
Close enough.
400 million they did.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Damn. Going further, the bill authorized an additional 46 million in banknotes and raised their maximum to 400 million.
Jeez. Eastern bankers vigorously lobbied. There's that word again. Lobbied Grant to veto the bill because of their reliance on bonds and foreign investors who did business in gold.
Right.
Most of Grant's cabinet favored the bill in order to secure a Republican election. Grant's conservative Secretary of State Hamilton Fish threatened to resign if Grant signed the bill.
Right.
April 22nd, 1874, after evaluating his own reasons for wanting to sign the bill, Grant unexpectedly vetoed it against the popular election strategy of the Republican Party because he believed it would destroy the nation's credit.
Right, and he knew he was out.
Probably good.
You don't care.
Right.
Congress passed a compromise bill. Grant signed on the 20th of June, 1874. The act legalized 26 million released by Richardson and set the maximum greenbacks at 382 million.
Okay.
Up to 55 million national banknotes would be redistributed from states, with an excess to those states that had minimal amounts. The act did little to relieve the national economy.
Right. That leads us to the resumption of the Specie Act. January 14th, 1875, Grant signed that act, and he could not have been happier, he says. He wrote a note to Congress congratulating members on the passage of the act. Legislation was drafted by Ohio Republican John Scheunemann.
Oh.
He's a senator. The act provided that paper money in circulation would be exchanged for gold specie and silver coins and would be effective January 1st, 1879. The act also implemented that gradual steps would be taken to reduce the number of greenbacks in circulation. At the time, there were paper coin currency worth less than $1.
Right.
And these would be exchanged for silver coins.
Yes.
Its effect was to stabilize the currency and make the consumer's money as good as gold.
Yes.
In an age without a Federal Reserve System to control inflation, this act stabilized the economy.
Damn right it did.
Grant, he considered it the hallmark of his administration. About time he did something.
That still wasn't that great.
Lord.
Let's take a look at foreign affairs. Foreign affairs were managed peacefully during Grant's second term. Historians
He
credit
had a lot going on domestically. I don't think he had to worry about foreign.
Historians credit Secretary of State Hamilton Fish with a highly effective foreign policy. Ronald Cedric White says of Grant, everyone agreed he chose well when he appointed Hamilton Fish Secretary of State.
Good for him.
Let's take a look at the Virginius incident. October 31st, 1873, a steamer Virginius flying the American flag carrying war materials and men to aid the Cuban insurrection in violation of American and Spanish law. It was intercepted and taken to Cuba. After a hasty trial, the local Spanish officials executed 53 would-be insurgents, 8 of whom were United States citizens.
Uh-oh.
Orders from Madrid to delay their executions arrived way too late.
Oh, see, that's the
like, no.
Jeez.
Son of a bitch.
Well, war scares erupted in both the U.S. and Spain, heightened by the bellicose dispatches from the American minister in Madrid, who was retired General Daniel Sickles. Secretary of State Fish, he kept a cool demeanor in the crisis, and through investigation discovered there was a question over whether the Virginius ship had the right to bear the United States flag at all.
Oh, okay.
The Spanish Republic's president, Emilio Castelar, he expressed profound regret for the tragedy and was willing to make reparations through arbitration.
He got to.
Fish, he then negotiated reparations with the Spanish minister, Senor Polo de Bonalbe. Hey, you killed 8 Americans. What kind of reparation are we going to get for that?
Right. With Grant's approval, Spain was to surrender Virginius and pay reparations to the 5 families of the Americans executed, and also salute the American flag.
Oh, shit.
No, so, like, all right, we'll do that, but are you sure you want us to do the last one?
Yes, do it. They'll kill us all.
All right.
Damn.
Well,
Dude.
the episode ended quietly.
Damn, have another nation salute their flag? That's crazy.
Great. Grant also played a pivotal role in this affair. Grant set American warships off of Florida and discussed Cuban invasion plans with General Sherman and the War Department. The bluff worked, and the Spanish government accepted Grant's negotiated peace terms. Grant messaged Congress the incident was closed, and national honor was restored.
Good for you, Grant.
It's like, dude, they even saluted a flag. Like, what?
However, though, the salute of the American flag by the Spanish Navy was a stickler. When the Spanish returned the Virginius, the Spanish Navy did not salute the American flag, disputing that the Virginius was not an American-owned ship.
Oh.
The next day, Grant's Attorney General George Williams ruled that the Virginius' U.S. ownership was fraudulent, but the Spanish had no right to capture the ship anyways.
Oh.
That was it. So they didn't end up saluting it. They're like,
Now, hold on.
Look at these guys.
Okay, good for them.
Right.
Take a look at the Hawaiian Free Trade Treaty. In December of 1874, Grant held a state dinner at the White House for the King of Hawaii, David Kalakaua, who was seeking the importation of Hawaiian sugar, duty-free to the United States. Grant and Fish were able to produce a successful free trade treaty in 1875 with the Kingdom of Hawaii, incorporating the Pacific Islands sugar industry into the United States economy sphere.
Look at that. And then we just took over their whole damn fucking country. Well, there's a thing called the Liberian-Grabo War. Grebo. The U.S. settled the war between Liberia and the native Grabo people in 1876 by dispatching the USS Alaska to Liberia. James Milton Turner, the first African-American ambassador from the United States, requested that a warship be sent to protect American property in Liberia, it's a former American colony. After Alaska arrived, Turner negotiated the incorporation of Grebo people into Liberian society and the ousting of foreign traders from Liberia. Okay. Good for you guys.
Cool. No reason at all for that to happen. Let's take a look at the Mexican border raids, wasn't very important. At the close of Grant's second term in office, Fish had to contend with the Indian raids on the Mexican border. This was due to a lack of enforcement over the U.S.-Mexican border. The problem.
Oh, really?
The problem would escalate during Hayes' administration under Fisher's successor, William Everett. That's it.
Let's take a look at these old Native American affairs.
Oh, man.
Under Grant's peace policy, wars between settlers, the Federal Army, and the American Indians had been decreasing from 101 per year in 1869 to a low of 15 per year in 1875. Oh.
Wow.
However, the discovery of gold in the Black Hills of the Dakota Territory and the completion of the Northern Pacific Railway that threatened to unravel Grant's Indian policy as white settlers encroached upon native land to mine for the gold.
His second term as president, Grant's fragile peace policy came apart. Major General Edward Canby murdered in the Modoc War. Indians' wars per year jumped from 32 in 1876 to 43 in 1877. One of the highest casualty Indian battles took place in American history, the Battle of Little Bighorn, 1876. Indian war casualties in Montana went from 5 in 1875 to 613 in 1876 to 436 in 1877. Huh?
That's just Montana.
All right.
Well, let's take a look at that Modoc War. January 1873, Grant's Native American peace policy was challenged. 2 weeks after Grant was reelected, fighting broke out between the Modocs and settlers near the California-Oregon border. Oh. The Modocs, led by Captain Jack, killed 18 white settlers and then found a strong defensive position. He then ordered General Sherman not to attack the Indians, but settle matters peacefully with the commission.
Okay.
Sherman then sent Major General Edward Canby, but Captain Jack killed him.
Oh.
Reverend Eleazar Thomas, who was a Methodist minister, was also killed. Alfred B. Meacham, an Indian agent, he was severely wounded.
The murders shocked the nation. Sherman wired to have the Modocs exterminated.
Oh.
Grant overruled Sherman. Captain Jack was executed, and the remaining 155 Modocs were relocated to the Quapaw Agency in the Indian Territory. This episode and the Great Sioux War undermined public confidence in Grant's peace policy. According to historian Robert Utley, he said that. During the peace negotiations between Brigadier General Edward Canby and the Modoc tribal leaders, there were more Indians in the tent than had been agreed upon. As the Indians grew more hostile, Captain Jack said, "I talk no more," and shouted, "All ready." Captain Jack drew his revolver, fired directly in the head of the General Canby. Brigadier General Canby was the highest ranking officer to be murdered during the Indian Wars that took place from 1850 to 1890. Damn. Alfred Meacham, who survived the massacre, defended the Modocs, who were put on trial.
Jeez. And then there's the Red River War. 1874, war erupted on the Southern Plains when Kuana Parker, leader of the Comanche, they led 700 tribal warriors and attacked the Buffalo Hunter supply base on the Canadian River at Adobe Walls, Texas. The Army under Philip Sheridan launched a military campaign, and with few casualties on either side, forced the Indians back to the reservations by destroying their horses and winter food supplies.
Yeah, can't do that.
Grant, who agreed to the Army plan advocated by General Sherman and Sheridan, imprisoned 74 insurgents in Florida. Obviously, that's not, you can look up, there's a whole thing on the Red River War. Right. So,
take a look at the Great Sioux War.
This is the Battle of Little Bighorn.
1874, gold had been discovered in the Black Hills in the Dakota Territory. White speculators and settlers rushed in droves seeking riches, mining gold on land reserved for the Sioux tribe that was granted to them from the Treaty of Fort Laramie of 1868. These prospectors treated the natives unfairly when they moved into the area. 1875, Des Moines conflict. Grant met with Red Cloud, chief of the Sioux, and offered $25,000 from the government to purchase the land. The offer declined. 3rd of November, 1875, at a White House meeting, General Sheridan told the president that the army was overstretched and could not defend the Sioux tribe from the settlers. Grant ordered Sheridan to round up the Sioux and put them on the reservation anyhow.
Well, Sheridan used a strategy of convergence, using army columns to force the Sioux onto the reservation. June 25th, 1876, one of these columns, led by Colonel George Custer, met the Sioux at the Battle of Little Bighorn, and part of his command was slaughtered, and him. Approximately 253 federal soldiers and civilians were killed, compared to 40 Indians. Custer's death and the Battle of Little Bighorn shocked the nation. Sheridan avenged Custer, pacified the northern plains, and put the defeated Sioux on the reservation, said, "You stay." August 15th, 1876, Grant signed a proviso, giving the Sioux Nation $1 million in rations, while the Sioux relinquished all rights to the Black Hills, except for a 40-mile land tract west of the 103rd Meridian.
Okay. August 28th, 7-man committee appointed by Grant gave additional harsh stipulations for the Sioux in order to receive government assistance. Half-breeds and squaw men, which is a white man with an Indian wife, they were banished from the Sioux reservation altogether. To receive government rations, the Indians had to work the land.
Oh.
Reluctantly, on the 20th of September, The Indian leaders, whose people were starving, agreed to the committee's demands and signed the agreement.
During the Great Sioux War, Grant came into conflict with Colonel George Custer after he testified in 1876 about corruption in the War Department under Secretary William Belknap. Grant had Custer arrested for breach of military protocol in Chicago and barred him from leading an upcoming campaign against the Sioux, if only.
Right.
Grant finally relented and let Custer fight under Brigadier General Alfred Terry.
Didn't know he was trying to save your life, Custer.
2 months after Custer's death, Grant castigated him in the press, saying, "I regard Custer's massacre as a sacrifice of troops brought on by Custer himself that was wholly unnecessary." Wholly unnecessary.
It was.
Oh, geez. Can't speak of the dead like that.
Right.
As the nation was shocked by the death of Custer, Grant's peace policy became militaristic. Congress appropriated funds for 2,500 more troops. 2 more forts were constructed. The Army took over the Indian agencies, and Indians were barred from purchasing rifles and ammo.
Take a look at the domestic affairs, religion, and schools. Grant believed strongly in separation of church and state and championed complete secularization in public schools.
Secularization?
Yep. In September of 1875 speech, Grant advocated security of free thought, free speech, and free press, pure morals, unfettered religious sentiments, and of equal rights and privileges to all men, irrespective of nationality, color, or religion. In regard to public education, Grant endorsed that every child should receive the opportunity of a good common school education, unmixed with sectarian, pagan, or atheist tenets. Leave the matter.
Go to learn. You don't need religion in schools.
Right. He went on to say, leave the matter of religion to the family altar, the church, and the private schools. Keep the church and the state forever separate, which is probably a good thing to do.
Another speech in 1875 to a veterans meeting, Grant called for a constitutional amendment that would mandate free public schools and prohibit the use of public money for sectarian schools.
All right.
Yeah, no church schools are getting money. He was echoing nativist sentiments that were strong in his Republican Party. Tyler Anbender, he says Grant was not an obsessive nativist. He expressed his resentment of immigrants and animus toward Catholicism only rarely.
Oh.
But these sentiments revealed themselves frequently enough in his writings and major actions as general.
Right.
In the 1850s, he joined a Know-Nothing Lodge and irrationally blamed immigrants for setbacks in his career.
Grant laid out his agenda for good common school education. He attacked government support for sectarian schools run by religious organizations, called for the defense of public education, unmixed with sectarian, pagan,
we know.
Right, and no atheists, please.
After Grant's speech, Republican Congressman James Blaine, he proposed the amendment to the federal Constitution. Blaine, who actively sought Catholic votes when he ran for president in 1884, he believed that possibility of hurtful agitation on the school question should be ended. 1875, the proposed amendment passed by a vote of 180 to 7 in the House of Representatives, but failed by 4 votes in the Senate. Nothing like it ever became federal legislation. However, many states did adopt similar amendments to their state constitution.
The proposed Blaine amendment text was as follows. No state shall make any law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, and no money raised by taxation in any state for the support of public schools or derived from any public fund therefore, nor any public lands devoted thereto, shall ever be under the control of any religious sect. Nor shall any money so raised or lands so devoted be divided between religious sects or denominations.
All right.
Okay.
Good for that. Well, we're moving on to polygamy and Chinese prostitution. Let's see what Grant's got to do with this. October of 1875, Grant, he traveled to Utah and was surprised that the Mormons treated him kindly. He told the Utah Territorial Governor George Emery that he had been deceived concerning the Mormons. However, December 7th, 1875, after his return to Washington, Grant wrote to Congress in his 7th annual State of the Union address that as an institution, polygamy should be banished from the land.
Yes.
Grant believed that polygamy negatively affected children and women.
Mm-hmm.
Grant advocated that a second law, stronger than the Moral Act, be passed to punish so flagrant a crime against decency and morality. He also denounced the immigration of Chinese women into the United States for purposes of prostitution, saying it was no less an evil than polygamy.
It's true.
I mean, yeah, if you're only coming here to be a whore.
Take a look at the interaction with the Jews. Grant publicly stated regret for his offensive wartime order expelling Jewish traders. In his army days, he traded at a local store operated by the Seligman brothers, 2 Jewish merchants who became Grant's lifelong friends. They became wealthy bankers who donated substantially to Grant's presidential campaign. After the wartime order, however, the Jewish community was angry with Grant. While running for president in 1868, Grant publicly apologized for the expulsion order. And once elected, he took actions intended to make amends. He appointed several Jewish leaders to office, including Simon Wolfe, recorder of deeds in Washington, D.C. Also, Edward S. Solomon, governor of the Washington Territory.
All right. Historian Jonathan Sarna, he argues, eager to prove that he was above prejudice, Grant appointed more Jews to public office than had any of his predecessors, and in the name of human rights, he extended unprecedented support to persecuted Jews in Russia and Romania. Time and time again, partly as a result of this enlarged vision of what it meant to be an American, and partly in order to live down General Orders Number 11, Grant consciously worked to assist Jews and secure them equality. Through his appointments and policies, Grant rejected calls for a Christian nation and embraced Jews as insiders in America, part of the We the People. During his administration, Jews achieved heightened status on the national scene. Anti-Jewish prejudice declined, and Jews looked forward optimistically to a liberal epoch characterized by sensitivity to human rights and interreligious cooperation.
Let's take a look at the midterm election in 1874. How's this going to shake up the old house? As 1874 midterm elections approach, 3 scandals: the credit mobilier, the salary grab, and the Sanborn incident. They caused the public to view the Republican Party as mired in corruption. Democratic Party held the Republican Party responsible for the Long Depression. Republicans were divided on the currency issue. Grant, who with hard money Northeastern Republicans, vetoed an inflation bill. Grant was blamed for the nation's problems, while he was accused of wanting a third term. Grant never officially campaigned, though, but he did travel west to emphasize his relatively popular Indian policy.
The October election swept the Republicans from office and was a repudiation of Grant's veto. In Indiana and Ohio, the Republicans suffered losses caused by the money issue and the temperance movement. The Democratic Party won the New York governorship for Samuel Tilden. The Democrats won the House, gaining 182 seats, while the Republicans retained 103. The Republicans retained control of the Senate, though, but the new class included 14 Democrats and 11 Republicans. The Democratic Party also had strong victories in Jersey, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Missouri, and Illinois.
Oh.
That's what happens when they don't like you, bud. They're going to get rid of your shit.
In the South, 1874 election campaign was violent.
Of course it was.
6 Republican office holders were murdered in Coushatta, Louisiana.
Jeez.
September 14th, 1874, General Longstreet, the Popo, and black militia fought 3,500 white leaguers who attempted to capture the State House in New Orleans. This ended in 32 people murdered. Grant issued a dispersal proclamation the very next day, sent 5,000 troops and 5 gunboats to New Orleans. The white leaguer resistance collapsed. The North disapproved of Grant's federal intervention into the election. What? What, you're supposed to allow it?
I guess.
And you shouldn't have done anything in 1861.
Right.
Republican representation dropped by 60%. Racism in both the North and the South called the rejection of the Reconstruction. In his December of 1864 annual message to Congress, Grant condemned violence against blacks in the South.
Well, guess what? It's his second term, but we got more reforms and scandals. Scandals and frauds continued to be exposed during Grant's second term in office. Although Grant's appointments of reformers to his cabinet temporarily helped his presidential reputation, cleaned up federal departments, and defeated the notorious whiskey ring. Grant, however, often remained loyal to cabinet members or appointees involved in corruption or mismanagement, refusing to believe in their guilt.
Right.
The Democrats, along with liberal Republicans, had gained control, and held many committee meetings to stop political graft.
Here we go. The Emmer Silver Mine was a minor embarrassment associated with American ambassador to Britain, Robert Schenck, using his name to promote a worked out silver mine. Okay. The credit mobilier scandal's origins were during the presidential administration of Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Johnson. However, political congressional infighting during the Grant administration exposed the scandal.
Okay, it sure did. Oh, we got the Sanborn contracts as well going on. June of 1874, Treasury Secretary William Richardson, he gave private contracts to I thought it said concerts at first, but damn, to one John Sanborn, who in turn collected illegally withheld taxes for fees at inflated commissions. The profits from the commissions were allegedly split with Richardson and Senator Benjamin Butler, while Sanborn claimed these payments were expenses. Senator Butler had written a loophole in the law that allowed Sanborn to collect the commissions, but Sanborn would not reveal whom he split the profits with.
Oh, obviously.
And that was a big old thing. You guys can read more about that.
Yes, you can. Let's take a look at Pratt and Boyd, whoever these guys are. April of 1875, it was discovered Attorney General George Williams allegedly received a bribe through a $30,000 gift to his wife from a merchant house company, Pratt and Boyd. This bribe was to drop the case for fraudulent custom house entries. Williams was forced to resign by Grant, 1875.
Delano's Department of Interior. See what's going on there. By 1875, the Department of Interior under Secretary of Interior Columbus Delano, he was in serious disrepair with corruption and fraud. Profiteering prevailed in the Bureau of Indian Affairs, controlled by corrupt clerks and bogus agents. This proved to be the most serious detriment to Grant's Indian peace policy. Many agents that worked for the department made unscrupulous fortunes and retired with more money than their pay would allow at the expense and exploitation of Native Americans. Well, they've just been doing this shit for years. Hundreds.
Delano had allowed Indian attorneys who were paid by Native American tribes $8 a day, plus food and travel expenses, for sham representation in Washington. Delano exempted his department from Grant's civil service reform implementation in federal offices. Delano told Grant the Interior Department was too large to implement civil service reform. Delano's son, John, and Grant's own brother, Orville Grant, were discovered to have been awarded lucrative corrupt cartographical contracts by Surveyor General Silas Reed.
Well, neither John Delano or Orville Grant performed any work or were qualified to hold such surveying positions.
Makes sense.
Massive fraud was also found in the patent office with corrupt clerks who embezzled from the government payroll. Under increasing pressure by the press and Indian reformers, Delano resigned from office October 15, 1875. Grant then appointed Zachariah Chandler as Secretary of the Interior, who replaced Delano. Chandler vigorously uncovered and cleaned up the fraud in the department by firing all the clerks and banned the phony Indian attorneys' access to Washington. Grant's Quaker or church appointments partially made up the lack of food staples and housing from the government. Chandler cleaned up the patent office by firing all the corrupt clerks.
There you go. Get rid of them bitches.
All right, old Elon Chandler.
Yeah. Take a look at the whiskey ring prosecution. Grant's presidency is often criticized for scandals.
You think?
Though Grant also appointed many reformers as well. In May of 1875, Secretary of Treasury Benjamin Bristow discovered that millions of dollars of taxes were being funneled into an illegal ring from whiskey manufacturers. Prosecutions ensued. Many were put in prison. Grant's private secretary, Orville Babcock, was indicted and later acquitted in trial. Grant's new Attorney General, Edwards Pierpont, and Bristow, they formed an anti-corruption team to weed out criminal activity during Grant's second term. Look at Bristow came back after getting, it was Babcock.
Right. Well, the whiskey ring was organized throughout the United States, and by 1875, it was a fully operating criminal association. The investigation and closure of the whiskey ring resulted in 230 indictments, 110 convictions, $3 million in tax revenues that were returned to the Treasury Department. Bristow and Pierpont, they brought evidence to Grant of Babcock's involvement. Grant asked Babcock with Bristow and Pierpont in attendance at the White House about the evidence.
That shit.
Is he going to lie?
Babcock, he gave Grant an explanation that the evidence did not concern the ring. Grant quietly accepted Babcock's words as face value. During the prosecution of the whiskey ring leaders, Grant testified on behalf of his friend Babcock, and as a result, Babcock was acquitted. However, the deposition by Grant was a great embarrassment to his reputation. The Babcock trial turned into an impeachment trial against the president by Grant's political opponents.
Basically, right?
Yeah.
Well, we got more rings. This time it's a trading post ring. March of 1876, it was discovered under House investigations. Secretary of War William Belknap was taking extortion money in exchange for allowing an Indian trading post agent to remain in position at Fort Sill. Belknap, he was allowed to resign by Grant, and as a result was acquitted in a state impeachment trial. Profits were made at the expense of Native Americans who were supposed to receive food and clothing from the government. Late April 1876, Grant lashed out at Lieutenant George Custer after Custer had testified, like we said earlier, at a congressional committee 1 month before, and that was against Grant's brother Orville and Secretary Belknap.
Yeah. There had been rumors Custer had talked with the press concerning the Indian Post profiteering. Custer personally went to the White House to clear matters up with the old president. However, Grant refused to see him 3 times. When Custer left Washington on the 3rd of May to return to Fort Lincoln, he had been removed from overall command by Grant, denied any participation in the Sioux campaign, having been replaced by Brigadier General Alfred Terry. However, at Terry's insistence, Grant said, "Come on, Custer, you can come back, and you can go and fight the Sioux," on the condition that he did not take any pressmen with him.
Look at the Indians killed him, and he was trying to help them out. Right. Well, let's take a look at something called catalysm. March of 1876, Secretary of Navy George Robinson, he was charged by a Democratic-controlled House investigation committee with giving lucrative contracts to Alexander Cattell and Company. He was a grain supplier in return for real estate, loans, and payment of debt. The House investigating committee also discovered that Secretary Robinson had allegedly embezzled $15 million in naval construction appropriations.
Some bitch.
Since there were no financial paper trails or enough evidence for impeachment and conviction, the House investigation, they admonished Robinson and claimed he had set up a corrupt contracting system known as cartelism.
Oh, making up words.
All right.
Take a look at this. There's such thing.
Apparently.
The safe burglary conspiracy. September 1876, Orville Babcock, superintendent of public works and buildings. He was indicted again in a safe burglary conspiracy case and trial. April, corrupt building contractors in Washington were on trial for graft when a safe robbery occurred. Bogus Secret Service agents broke into a safe and attempted to frame Columbus Alexander, who had exposed a corrupt contracting ring. Babcock was named as part of the conspiracy, but later acquitted in trial. Evidence suggests that Babcock was involved with the swindles by the corrupt Washington contractors ring, and he wanted revenge on Columbus Alexander, and an avid reformer and critic of the Grant administration. There was also evidence that a safe burglary jury had been tampered with.
Of course there was. Jeez, old Peters. All right, finally, this fucking corrupt-ass president's about to be out of the White House.
Holy shit.
Election of 1876, the Republicans nominated the fiscally conservative Rutherford B. Hayes.
Damn right.
The Democrats nominated reformer Samuel Tilden. Results were split. Tilden received 51% of the popular vote.
Damn.
Hayes 48. Many black Republicans were not allowed to vote, however. Of course. 20 key electoral votes remained undecided and in dispute. Both Republicans and Democrats claimed victory. Of course they did. And the threat of a second civil war was imminent. Grant was watchful, encouraged Congress to settle the election by commission, and determined to keep a peaceful transfer of power.
Oh, wow. On the 29th of January, 1877, Grant signed the Electoral Commission Act that gave a 15-member bipartisan commission power to determine electoral votes. The commission gave Hayes 185 electoral votes, and Tilden received 184.
Oh, I'm sure he was pissed, huh?
Grant's personal honesty, firmness, and even handiness assured the nation a second civil war was averted.
Right. All right, Grant's out. Let's take a look at how history has evaluated him. Grant's presidency has traditionally been viewed by historians as incompetent and full of corruption. Did you guys just hear the last hour of this damn podcast?
Yeah.
An examination of his presidency reveals Grant had both successes and failures.
He did.
Recent years, historians have elevated his presidential rating because of his support for African-American
Get the
civil
hell outta
rights.
here.
Grant had urged the passing of the 15th Amendment and signed into law the Civil Rights Bill of 1875.
Cool.
That gave all citizens access to places of public enterprise. Oh, yeah, just 100 years later, it still didn't mean anything.
He leaned heavily toward the radical camp, often sided with their Reconstruction policies, signing into law the Force Acts to prosecute the Ku Klux Klan. In foreign policy, Grant won praise for the Treaty of Washington, settling the Alabama claims issue with Britain through arbitration. Economically, he sided with the Eastern bankers and signed the Public Credit Act that paid United States debts in gold, but was blamed for the severe economic depression that lasted from 1873 to 1877.
And Grant, wary of powerful congressional leaders, was the first president to ask for a line item veto through Congress, though Congress never allowed one.
Oh.
His presidency was inundated with many scandals caused by low standards and carelessness with his political appointees and personal associates. Nepotism practiced by Grant was unrestrained, with almost 40 family members or relatives who financially benefited from government appointments or employment.
I bet.
His associations with these scandals have tarnished his personal reputation while president and afterwards. Despite the scandals, by the end of Grant's second term, the corruption in the Departments of Interior, 1875, Treasury, 1874, and Justice Department, 1875, were cleaned up by his new cabinet members.
All right. Look at that shit. His generous treatment of Robert E. Lee Appomattox helped give him popularity in the South. Although he kept civil rights on the political agenda, the Republican Party at the end of Grant's second term shifted to pursuing conservative fiscal policies. His weak response to the Panic of 1873 hurt the economy and seriously damaged his party, which lost heavily in 1874. Grant's financial policies favored Wall Street, but his term ended with the nation mirrored in a deep economic depression that Grant could not comprehend or deal with. I don't understand what's going on.
Well, revisionist historians during the first half of the 20th century have tended to prop up a romantic view of the Confederacy and the lost cause at the expense of downgrade in the Union cause and Grant's presidency as a corrupt despot. The 20th century historical views of Grant were less favorable. Political analyst Michael Barone, he noted in 1998 that Ulysses S. Grant is universally ranked among the greatest American generals, and his memoirs are widely considered to belong with the best military autobiographies ever written. But he is inevitably named by conservatives as well as liberals as one of the worst freaking presidents in American history.
You were not kidding. Damn. Raymond Barone argues this consensus, however, is being challenged by writers outside the Professional Historians Guild. He went on to say that lawyer Frank Scaturo, who led the movement to restore Grant's tomb while only a college student, and in 1998 wrote the first book of the modern era, which portrays Grant's presidency in a positive light.
Oh.
Barone said that Scaturo's work was a convincing case that Grant was a strong and, in many important respects, successful president. It is an argument full of significance for how we see the course of American political history. Scaturo's work should prompt a reassessment of the entire progressive New Deal tradition. No. We'll just take the facts as we see it and then judge from that, motherfucker.
Well, apparently, in the 21st century, Grant's reputation and ranking had significantly increased.
Of course.
That followed a series of positive biographies written by noted historians that included Jean Edward Smith, which was called Grant, H.W. Brand's The Man Who Saved the Union, Ulysses S. Grant in War and Peace, and most recently Ronald C. White in his book American Ulysses, A Life of Ulysses S. Grant. Historian Joan Wall, she said that Grant took steps where a few other presidents have attempted in the areas of Native American policy, civil service reform, and African American rights. She also said Grant executed a successful foreign policy and was responsible for improving Anglo-American relations. Awesome.
Interest in his presidency has also increased by historians. That included Josiah Bunting III. His book, Ulysses S. Grant, The American President Series, the 18th President. After leaving the White House, Grant said he was never so happy in his life.
I bet.
The Grants left Washington for New York to attend the birth of their daughter Nellie's child. The Grants toured Cincinnati, St. Louis, Chicago, and Galena.
I don't know why they're touring their home city, but okay.
Without any clear idea of where they would live.
Oh. Well, he goes on world tour and gets some diplomacy in there, using $25,000, which is equivalent to $720,000 nowadays, from liquidating an investment in a Nevada-based mining company. The Grant set out on a world tour for approximately 2.5 years. Dude, you had all the money in the world. How the hell did you go broke?
Right.
I don't understand. May 16th, Grant and his wife left for England aboard the SS Indiana. During the tour, the Grants made stops in Europe, Africa, India, Middle East, and the Far East, meeting with notable dignitaries such as Queen Victoria, Tsar Alexander II, Pope Leo XIII, Otto von Bismarck, Li Hongzhang, and Emperor Meiji. As a courtesy to Grant by the Hayes administration, his touring party received federal transportation on 3 U.S. Navy ships. One was a 5-month tour of the Mediterranean on the USS Vandalia, travel from Hong Kong to China on the USS Ashalot, and from China to Japan on the USS Richmond.
Fantastic. The Hayes administration encouraged Grant to assume a public unofficial diplomatic role and strengthen American interest aboard. Homesick, the Grants left Japan on the SS City of Tokyo and landed in San Francisco on the 20th of September, 1879. They were greeted by cheering crowds. Grant's tour demonstrated to Europe and Asia that the United States was nobody to be fucked with.
Basically, they're like, these guys are getting big.
We're an emerging world power, motherfuckers.
Well, he gets a third term attempt, apparently.
Ooh.
Politically conservative, Grant was supported by the stalwarts, who, led by Grant's old political ally, Roscoe P. Coltrane, Roscoe Conklin, saw Grant's renewed popularity as an opportunity and sought to nominate him for the presidency in 1880. Opponents called it a violation of the unofficial 2-term rule in use since George. Grant said nothing publicly but wanted the job and encouraged his men. Oh, geez. Washburn urged him to run. Grant demurred. Even so, Conklin and John Logan, they began to organize delegates in Grant's favor. When the convention convened in Chicago in June, more delegates were pledged to Grant than any other candidate, but he was still short of a majority vote.
Oh. At the convention, Conklin nominated Grant with an eloquent speech, the most famous line being, "When asked which state he hails from, our sole reply shall be, he hails from Appomattox and its famous apple tree." Oh, gosh. With 378 votes needed for the nomination, the first ballot had Grant 304, Blaine, 284, and Sherman at 93.
Well, Sherman.
And the rest 2 minor candidates.
I don't know why they're having minors.
All right. After 36 ballots, Blaine's delegates...
36?
Wow. Blaine's delegates combined with those of other candidates to nominate a compromise candidate, James Garfield.
Jamie Garfield.
Which would become president.
A procedural motion made the vote unanimous for Garfield. Grant gave speeches for Garfield, but declined to criticize the Democratic nominee Winfield Scott Hancock. Garfield, he won the election. Grant gave Garfield his public support and pushed him to include stalwarts in his administration. On July 2nd, 1881, Garfield was shot by an assassin and died September 19th. On learning of Garfield's death from a reporter, Grant wept.
Oh, wow. Take a look at his business failures. In the 19th century, there were no federal presidential pensions.
No.
The Grant's personal income was $6,000 a year.
Dude, I mean, it's $179,000 a year, dude. You can't freaking...
Can't live on that.
Jeez.
Grant's world tour had been costly.
He had $700,000 equivalent.
He had depleted most of his savings. Wealthy friends bought him a house on Manhattan's Upper East Side. And to make an income, Grant, Jay Gould, and former Mexican Finance Secretary Matias Romero, they chartered the Mexican Southern Railroad with plans to build a railroad from Oaxaca to Mexico City.
Huh?
Grant purged President Chester Arthur.
He purged him.
Grant urged President Arthur to negotiate a free trade treaty with Mexico. Arthur and the Mexican government agreed, but the U.S. Senate rejected the treaty in 1883. The railroad was similarly unsuccessful, falling into bankruptcy the following year.
Wow. At the same time, Grant's son Buck, he had opened a Wall Street brokerage house with Ferdinand Ward. A conniving man who swindled numerous wealthy men, Ward was at the time regarded as a rising star on Wall Street. The firm, Grant and Ward, it was initially successful. Well, of course, it's got to be if you're going to swindle somebody. 1883, Grant joined the firm and invested $100,000, which is $2.78 million in 2023 of his own money.
Oh, wow.
Ward, he paid investors abnormally high interest by pledging the company's securities on multiple loans in a process called rehypothecation, now regarded as a Ponzi scheme. Ward, in collusion with banker James Fish and kept secret from bank examiners, retrieved the firm's securities from the company's bank vault.
Okay.
When the trades went bad, multiple loans came due, all backed by the same collateral. Oh, no.
Historians agree that the elder Grant was likely unaware of Ward's intentions, but it is unclear how much Buck Grant knew. In May of 1884, enough investments went bad to convince Ward that the firm would soon be bankrupt. Ward, who assumed Grant was a child in business matters, told him the impending failure, but assured Grant that this was a temporary shortfall. Grant approached businessman William Henry Vanderbilt, who gave him a personal loan of $150,000. Damn. Grant invested the money in the firm.
Oh, jeez.
But it was not enough to save it. The fall of Grant and Ward set off the Panic of 1884.
Jeez. Vanderbilt offered to forgive Grant's debt entirely, but Grant refused. Impoverished but compelled by personal honor, he repaid what he could with his Civil War mementos, and the sale or transfer of all other assets.
Wow.
Vanderbilt took title to Grant's home, although he allowed the Grants to continue to reside there, and pledged to donate the souvenirs to the federal government and insisted the debt had been paid in full.
There you go.
Grant was distraught over Ward's deception and asked privately how he could ever trust any human being again. March 1885, he testified against both Ward and Fish. After the collapse of Grant and Ward, there was an outpouring of sympathy for Grant.
Aw.
Oh, get a GoFundMe?
All right. Take a look at the memoirs, military pension, illness, and the ultimate demise of Ulysses S. Grant.
Smoked all those cigars.
Grant intended a service for Civil War veterans in Ocean Grove, New Jersey, August 4th, 1884, receiving a standing ovation from the 10,000 attendees. It would be his last public appearance. Summer of 1884, Grant complained of a sore throat, but put off seeing a doctor until late October, when he learned it was cancer, possibly caused by his frequent cigar smoking. He chose not to reveal the seriousness of his condition to his wife, who soon found out from Grant's doctor. In March 1885, the New York Times announced that Grant was dying of cancer, causing nationwide public concern.
Knowing of Grant and Julia's financial difficulties, Congress restored him to the rank of General of the Army with full retirement pay.
Nice.
Grant's assumption of the presidency had required that he resign his commission and forfeit his and his widow's pension.
Right.
Grant was nearly penniless and was worried about leaving his wife money to live on.
Right.
He approached the Century magazine and wrote a number of articles on his Civil War campaigns for $500 each, which is about $17,000 today. What do you do with all this money?
All right.
The articles were well received by critics, and the editor, Robert Underwood Johnson, he suggested Grant write a memoir, as Sherman and others had already done. Yeah, why haven't you done that?
All right. Well, that very same magazine offered him a book contract with a 10% royalty. However, Grant's friend Mark Twain, one of the few who understood Grant's precarious financial condition, offered him an unheard of 70% royalty.
Damn.
To provide for his family, Grant worked intensely on his memoirs in New York City. His former staff member, Adam Beddoe, assisted with the research, while his son, Frederick, located documents and did much of the fact-checking. Because of summer heat and humidity, his doctors recommended that he move upstate to a cottage at the top of Mount McGregor, offered by a family friend. Oh.
July 18th, 1885, Grant finished his memoir, which included the events of his life to the end of the Civil War. The Personal Memoirs of U.S. Grant was a critical and commercial success. Julia Grant, she eventually received about $450,000 in royalties, which is about a little over $15 million in today's money. The memoir has been highly regarded by the public, military historians, and literary critics. Grant portrayed himself as an honorable Western hero whose strength lies in his honesty. He candidly depicted his battles against both the Confederates and internal Army foes.
Oh, Grant died in the Mount McGregor Cottage on July 23rd, 1885. Sheridan, then commanding general of the Army, ordered a day-long tribute to Grant on all military posts, and President Grover Cleveland ordered a 30-day nationwide period of mourning. After private services, the Honor Guard placed Grant's body on a funeral train, which traveled to West Point and then to New York City. 250,000 people viewed it in 2 days before the funeral. Tens of thousands of men, many of them veterans from the Grand Army of the Republic, marched with Grant's casket, drawn by 24 black stallions, to Riverside Park in Morningside Heights, Manhattan.
His pallbearers included Union General Sherman and Sheridan, Confederate Generals Simon Bolivar Buckner and Joseph Johnston.
Oh, no shit.
Admiral David Dixon Porter, and Senator John Logan. He was the head of the Guard at that time. Following the casket and the 7-mile-long procession were President Cleveland, 2 former living presidents, Hayes and Arthur, all of the president's cabinet, and justices of the Supreme Court. Attendance at the New York funeral topped 1.5 million.
Ceremonies were held in other major cities around the country, while Grant was eulogized in the press. Grant's body was laid to rest in Riverside Park, first in a temporary tomb, and then on the 17th of April 1897 in the General Grant National Memorial, known as Grant's Tomb, the largest mausoleum in North America.
All right, let's take a look at his historical reputation. Grant hailed across the North as the general who saved the Union, and overall his military reputation has held up well. Achieving great national fame for his victories at Vicksburg and the surrender at Appomattox, Grant was the most successful general, Union or Confederate, in the Civil War. He was criticized by the South for using excessive force, and his drinking was often exaggerated by the press and stereotyped by rivals and critics. Was it? Historians also debate how effective Grant was at halting corruption. The scandals during his administration stigmatized his political reputation.
During the late 19th and early 20th century, Grant's reputation was damaged by the Lost Cause movement and the Dunning School. Views of Grant reached new lows as he was seen as an unsuccessful president and an unskilled, if lucky, general. In the 1950s, some historians reassessed Grant's military career, shifting the analysis of Grant as the victor by brute force to that of a skillful, modern strategist and commander.
I have to have a little bit of time to look at what the stuff he was doing. It's like, hey, maybe he was actually pretty brilliant.
Right.
Historian William McFeely's biography, called Grant in 1981, had won the Pulitzer Prize and brought renewed scholarly interest in Grant. McFeely believed Grant was an ordinary American trying to make his mark during the 19th century. Didn't they just say earlier the dude in 1998 wrote positively about him or some shit? It was the first one or something. 21st century, Grant's reputation improved markedly among historians after the publication of Grant in 2001 by historian John Edward Smith. Opinions of his presidency demonstrated better appreciation of Grant's personal integrity, Reconstruction efforts, and peace policy toward the Indians, even when they fell short.
H.W. Brand's The Man Who Saved the Union in 2012, Ronald White's American Ulysses 2016, and Ron Chernow's Grant in 2017 continue the elevation of Grant's reputation. White said that Grant demonstrated a distinctive sense of humility, moral courage, and determination. And as president, he stood up for African Americans, especially fighting against voter suppression perpetrated by the KKK.
Because he stood up for one group of people, it makes him the greatest.
Get the hell out of here.
I mean, geez, dude. I mean, obviously it was a good thing, but
right. But he
don't
also
need to revision his presidency just because of that.
But he also massacred the Indians.
Right.
White believed that Grant was an exceptional person and leader. Historian Robert Farley writes that the cult of Lee and the Dunning School's resentment of Grant for his defeat of Lee and his strong enforcement of Reconstruction resulted in Grant's shoddy treatment by historians.
In a 2021 C-SPAN survey ranking presidents from worst to best, Grant, he was ranked 20 out of 44.
So he's mad.
Up from previous ranking of 33 in 2017. Ooh. This was due to the rehabilitation of his image and legacy in recent years, with Grant now receiving more credit for Reconstruction and his diplomacy than condemnation. Oh, yeah, well, that's Ulysses S. Grant and his freaking presidency. Wow. Yeah, talk about a lot of corruption. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I think his corruption stuff overshadows his... He was good to the African Americans, and he had a peace policy with the Indians, which still resulted in wars.
Right.
So, yeah, dude didn't care about any of his close friends and family members getting fraudulent fucking payments from doing fraudulent things.
He wasn't really that great of a general, because if Lee would have took him seriously, the war could have turned out different. So I guess he did get that luck. He's a luck general.
Speaking of, we'll be covering old Robert E. Lee himself next week. And, yeah, continuing on with this behind the battle stuff. This is a long-ass episode, so we're going by Molly Michiganders with...
Yep.